actually got the ball. Yes, good afternoon, Tottenham fans, and welcome back to the Irish Hotspur with your boys, Dave and Jack. And today we are building up to a massive game away against Brighton at the Amex. Not being a happy hunting ground for Tottenham in recent years, it is going to be a difficult game. And we have plenty to talk about. And today, to break it down with us, we have Jack. We also have Stevie and Marcelo. He's just changing from his phone to his computer, and he'll be on with us. First of all, Jack, how are you, my man? Sorry I wasn't there Tuesday, but, you know, we got the job done.
I got the job done in the most job done type of manner, really. I'm doing okay. Like you say there, would like to get some revenge against Brighton. I feel like we haven't had maybe any real convincing wins there in some time there, at least to my memory. I don't know. Maybe there's one, maybe more recently. I'm forgetting, but it feels like plenty of times we played well there before, just didn't get what we deserved. And then there also have been some games where we've absolutely just not shown up and played terribly. So it'd be nice to get one over the Seagulls here. The hipsters' favorite, if anything, the Brighton team.
Yeah, and look, they're I give it to them. They're a difficult outfit under Hassan. No, not Hassan.
Hurtzler, yeah.
Hurtzler, they're a decent outfit, and they're one of them teams. If you're off it by 10%, especially down at their place, they do take advantage of it. So it is going to be a difficult game today. But I do want to kick off discussion though, guys, just around sort of Tuesday night's game. So after the 1-0 win over Villarreal, yes, we got the result, but let's be honest, quite a few fans walked away feeling very underwhelmed by the performance. Once again, we struggled to click in the final third and really kill the game off. But on the flip side, we've only conceded one in the last 5, and that's the Frank effect right there, that even when you don't play well, you can still get over the line and get the result. Are we seeing the Tottenham team learning how to win ugly, or is the lack of attacking rhythm still a real concern? And we'll start with you, Jack, and work our way around the panel, because the reaction after the Villarreal game, I was quite surprised about, because last year people would have been pining for a 1-0 win, but now the reality of it, a lot of fans are sort of left underwhelmed by the performance.
Well, you just often can't win as a Spurs manager, right? You employ a more defensive foundation, and then all of a sudden people ridicule for not having an attacking foundation yet. But if you started out with an attacking foundation, they would ridicule you for not having a defensive one yet. And we're only so early into proceedings here. And I think Thomas Frank's main choice that's come across very clearly here is that he has looked at the last, 3 seasons basically at Spurs, where we've conceded close to, if not more, 60 plus goals almost in every single one of those seasons. And he's probably felt like, you know what, first I need to just establish the want and the desire to defend well, not concede too many goals, and make us hard to beat. That's my understanding of defensive-minded football, is that you are a team that's hard to beat. You might not always be the most pleasing on the eye, but you're not going to be a team that's just going to roll over easily, and you're just going to be able to blow away easily either. And I think Spurs have quickly become that type of side. I felt like there was a want to score goals in that game. I think that was just one of the poorer performances on the player side of things. I don't think it really had much to do with Thomas Frank. It's only my take on it, but there were so many times in that game where Spurs were just really sloppy in possession, really poor in terms of just being able to do some of the simple things. When we're building out, someone just gives it away totally unnecessarily with a stray pass. There were a couple of breakaways that just ended up breaking down with a poor pass or a poor decision or a poor ball in behind. And then all of a sudden, then Villarreal would transition, start running towards us. They would give it away. We would give it away right back. That was one of the biggest frustrations, is there were a lot of times where Villarreal would just give it right back to us. And then for some reason, we would then give it right back to them. It was honestly an ugly game, really, from both sides, even if you say that Villarreal outplayed us. But I just felt like, it was a sign that Spurs can win ugly. And to be honest, that was something we couldn't really do the last 2 seasons, to be perfectly frank, except in the Europa League. In the Europa League, we found a way to do it. In the Premier League, not so much.
100%. And I just think that's something that's been missed, Tuesday night. Don't get me wrong. First night back in the Champions League, I know fans were hoping for maybe a much more of a dominant performance and to score a lot of goals. But at the end of the day, when you don't play well, the sign of a good team is still learning how to win. And we've done that. You see Mickey van de Ven make a couple of challenges, could have got sent off on the night. But at the end of the day, it sort of shows the hunger and the desire to win the game, defend ugly. Thomas Frank mentioned something in his pre-match press conference about, refusing to put Xavi Simons in the number 10 because of the defensive duties that Sarr or Bergvall perform in that role. So, I do think, this Tottenham team deserves a lot of credit for getting over the line. I think it's the sign of a good team. When you don't play well, you still know how to get over the line. And that's exactly what we've done. And it's ability we haven't shown in a number of years, so I do think it deserves a bit of praise. In terms of the attacking, I do think that's going to come. Thomas Frank alluded to it. That we've got a lot of new signings. Dom Solanke's out injured, Kulu, Madison, all your players that started in that forward line last year, a lot of them, they're all out injured. We're sort of trying to put together a new forward line, and that is going to take time, unfortunately, to sort of gel together and get them patterns, the rhythm of play, learning how to play with each other. But first and foremost, in order to win games and in order to allow that attack and play to develop, you've got to keep clean sheets and, and give yourself a chance of winning the game. And ultimately, that's what we've done. And then once that forward line does click, then I think we're going to be a very, very decent outfit. But Stevie, what's your thoughts on Tuesday night? Were you surprised by the reaction from Spurs fans?
A little bit, but that being said, man, there's an old saying, man, an ugly dub is still a dub nonetheless, and I'll take that, right? I'd rather be a team that is solid defensively, that's tough to break down, than to be what we've seen over the last couple of years where we're absolutely wide open. And a game like this, in the first opportunity to make a good impression in the Champions League. Now, understand, this is not the Europa League. This isn't Ferencváros or Karabag. This is actually against a very good Spanish outfit that you can't.
They've won the Europa League. People forget.
Yeah, listen, man, they don't suffer any fools, right? And so I would probably understand there might be some nerves attached to that. But that being said, I think you hit it right on the head, right? This is an attack that's not what we saw over the last couple of years, right? This team is based in defensive principles, and it almost feels like it's more of a counterattacking type of team. And when you actually check the fact that we're breaking in two new attacking players into this, there's going to be chemistry issues, and that thing is not going to happen overnight. Sometimes it does, but that's kind of the exception, not the rule, right? So there's going to be a little bit of some growing pains when it comes to it, because obviously these players have to get on the same page. I wish it would be nice if we can snap our fingers and all of a sudden they're scoring 3 goals per game, but unfortunately, that's just not the case. And so when you get these type of performances, you have to take them where you get them, right? And I would probably assume that we got the 3 points. People should just be actually happy with the 3 points and understand that over the course of the next 4 weeks. Now, granted, we also have another international window coming up, so there's going to be another pause. But that being said, the more time on the training pitch, this thing is going to start to show. And by the time we hit November and we actually start getting some tougher opponents, I think you're going to see the actual talent show.
100%. And look, ideally coming into October, November, you do need this forward line to start producing something, just a little bit more cohesion, a little bit more flair, a little bit more creativity, and become a lot more dangerous, quite frank. But look, at the end of the day, the ability to keep clean sheets is something that can help you take points. Yeah. And then once that forward line clicks, then you're going to start winning a lot more games and hopefully putting back-to-back wins together. However, some of these flat performances we are seeing, that is something that Thomas Frank does need to sort of eradicate. It stinks of, hangover from last season's sort of regime where it's okay to sort of not turn up for a game. So that is something that we are going to talk about. But Marcelo, where are you at with Tuesday night's win? Because look, a lot of people, like I say, keep pulling out the performance, but for me, sometimes I don't mind winning 1-0 rather than 3-2 thrillers all the time.
For me, it's you got to be patient. It's the start of a new process, and like progress is like this. When you have a new manager, you're gonna have some performances where we're gonna look amazing because you get the manager bounce, and then
We'll get Marcelo to log out and log back in because his screen's gone frozen as well. If you can hear me, Marcelo, just log out and log back in. We'll come back to him on that. But guys, maybe just another quick question for you two while we're waiting for Marcelo to come back. We are back in Europe. Games are coming thick and fast, and expectations are sky high right now. We can sit here and say, at the start of the season, we're a team in transition. But I think everyone's getting excited by the start of the season that we've had. Does this Spurs squad have the legs, the mentality, and the experience to fight on both fronts all the way until May? We'll go to you on this one, Jacko.
Geez. I flip back and forth on this. Part of me kind of feels like no, just because I still feel like we're short in terms of quality on the left wing. At the same time, we do have guys who technically can play there. It's just which ones will actually be able to perform on a high level on a regular basis. And, praying no injuries to the back line as well, because I just think there's such a significant drop off if you lose a Romero and lose a Van de Ven. The idea that Ben Davis is still considered, one of the main backups for that defense just still feels like it's a constant thorn in my side, as well as I would say probably Thomas Franks to some degree. Maybe he'll feel differently. I won't admit to it. But then again, like the fact that Kulusevski and Madison aren't even available yet is also crazy to think about, because if they were, available for selection in this team, you really would think geez, there's a lot of depth in terms of the creative side of this team. I would say yes for the most part, but I'm not going to say it super convincingly. I wouldn't be able to just, say, yeah, we have quality in every single position, 2 quality players in every position to compete with each other. Fullback is a big area of concern. Part of the defense in terms of the center backs is a bit of a concern for me. And then I would say maybe the forward line in terms of left wing and even right wing to a degree. Once Kudus goes as well, you'd start to get worried.
I think you're absolutely spot on. I think there's a huge concern if you pick up an injury to either Romero or Van de Ven. Do you lose that defensive stability, that sort of ability to be able to keep clean sheets? But also, if you lose one of them forward players, you're sort of back in very quickly into the same situation we were sort of in last season. I do think that's a huge concern. However, what I will say, Stevie, is Frank has demonstrated that he can make changes and still go and get the result done. I think he surprised many by leaving out Bentancur against West Ham, playing Bergvall, got the job done against Burnley. He left out he played Graham Bergvall in the midfield. And also the other night, he left out Paulinho and got minutes, rested for him, and we still got the job done. So, I would say the evidence is maybe there to support maybe that we could maybe handle it a little bit better than what we did last season.
Well, the question is whether or not they have that type of rotation or depth to last till May. Really, the question is can they actually weather the storm until January, until we know for a fact there's going to be an opportunity to actually clean up certain depth? Because as of right now, Jack just actually hit the nail right on the head. It's not so much an issue with defense. It's exactly what happens if one of our attacking 3 goes down. How are they going to be able to fill the void with quality, right? And so, for me, that is the reason why it's an unresounding no. I don't think we can even last till May, let alone January, especially if we actually end up having, a catastrophic injury, let alone what we saw last season, right? And so I think the good news is the fact that at least with the midfield rotation, I don't think that's necessarily going to be an issue, even with Kulusevski out, even without Madison out. I think they might be able to weather the storm, and to maybe a certain extent on the left wing side. But that being said, it's there is a little bit of worry off that defensive 4, but at least we actually have a guy like Kevin Danso to fill the void, right? So at least there is something there, and then there's also the potential of getting a guy like Rado Dragic back that can also potentially fill a void and maybe fill in for a couple of games. So at least you're not necessarily completely shit out of luck on the defensive side. But that being said, I would probably assume that if we can actually make it to January, I think a lot of that is going to be remedied, because I would probably assume that, especially if we're within 8 points and we're within shouting distance, 100% there's going to be reinforcements. I would probably have to assume.
Yeah, I think you're both spot on there. I think, if you can sort of maintain this until January and then maybe look in the January market. The only thing I will say is the January market is very hard to bring in sort of them game-changing players that you really need, especially in the forward areas. The areas where I would be looking at maybe improving in January, which I do think you could get to a decent standard, is possibly another fullback, maybe that extra centre midfielder if we allow Basuma to go, just to bring in that extra cover. However, 4 players are very hesitant to go after them in the January window, because what club is going to want to sell a player that's performing and creating and scoring goals for them, so it's going to cost you an astronomical amount of money. But like I said, the team have shown, and Thomas Frank has shown that when he has made a couple of changes, we're still showing the ability to be able to get the job done, which I think is absolutely huge. While we let Marcelo get himself settled there, we are going to welcome in some people from the chat. We've got Spurs GCTV. Afternoon, lads. It's game day. Let's go. Come on, you Spurs. Big up, Graham. Good to see you, my man. Hopefully you're keeping well. Rain is in the house this afternoon. It's game day. Come on, you Spurs. Shem Tam says, afternoon as well. Good afternoon to you and Rain, my man. Big up, Shem. Get the kebabs on order today. Thomas said, good afternoon, guys. Hope everyone is well. Big up, Thomas. Good to see you. Hopefully you're keeping well, buddy. We've got Reckless Madness. Big up, Al. Good morning, Dave, Jack, and Stevie. So early for Jack. Come on, you Spurs. It is, but Jack does.
What are you doing up, Alan? You're on the same time zone.
Is he?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's on the same time zone. What are you doing, Alan? How's
Can't
the coffee?
Can't sleep, or else the wife has kept him up, one or the two. But anyway, he's a happy man. That's the main thing. Shem says, afternoon, Jack and Dave, Mr. Stevie and Marcelo. Hope you're all good today. Tough game as always when we play at Brighton, but we keep it tight and hit them on the break. Which speed we can get at them. Look, Brighton, I will say, I think they lead the way in all the pressing metrics. You know, they are a difficult team to sort of play through. They do put a lot of pressure on you. We couldn't handle it when Bournemouth done it to us. It'd be very interesting to see how we get on today. Who else have we got in the house? We've got J-Mac. Big up J-Mac. Big up Davey Lad, Jacko, Stevie, and Marcelo. Come on, you Spurs. Big up J-Mac. Good to see you in the house, buddy. We've got Dark Sun G. It's time to fix the worst game of the season today. I presume are you on about Tottenham Brighton, or are you on about a different game? It's hard to know what you, Dark Sun G. You could be on about the Merseyside Derby or anything.
Worst game of last season, and I felt that was one of the worst games of last season.
4-2.
Yeah, 2-0. They're 2-0 up at at Amex.
Oh yeah, we lost
3-2.
3-2. Oh my god.
Epic collapse.
I actually I did. I'm pretty sure I did. I think I predicted this. Dave and I do our predictions, and we were saying what's going to be the biggest win of the season. I'm not sure if it will come away from home in this game, but I did say that Brighton is a team I imagine we could potentially get one of our biggest wins, just because I wonder if there is a little bit of leftover revenge from just that capitulation. At least I'm that sort of person where, you know, you lose in that type of manner, you really want to make up for it the next time that you play them. So yeah, that was probably one of the worst losses under the Postecoglou era. I don't know, maybe that Liverpool ones were worse, but something about that Brighton game really was potentially a sign towards the end, if anything. 2-0 up at halftime, and to capitulate in that way was just ridiculous.
If I remember correctly, I think we were actually doing all right up until that game, and then sort of after that game, I think
we just fell apart. We just completely fell apart in 15 minutes. It was crazy.
I think
we were 2 up at the half. We were 2 up at the break, and everybody was celebrating like it was over. But if you paid attention to Brighton's players, their heads weren't dropped. They were still glued into that match. Yeah, 100%. It was an epic collapse.
But I think that's a warning sign today, right? It doesn't matter how many goals you're leading by. This team ain't dead and buried. But, you know, I think there was a massive fallout off the back of that game. Postecoglou and Maddison didn't get on for quite some time. Yeah. You know, Maddison pulling out challenges. Werner, you know, was also another victim of that game.
My God.
You know,
don't even get me started with that
challenges.
guy,
Him and Postecoglou didn't get on after that game. It was a massive fallout and sort of collapsed our season in the Premier League to a large degree. Yep. So the warning signs are there that they're not dead and buried, even if you are 2-0 up. However, I think on the flip side, we do go 2-0 up. We ain't letting that slip under Thomas Frank, I don't think. I think Thomas Frank, you know, the way he has our defense set up and stuff like that, I do believe we'd see it out this time. Big up, Dark Sung G. Good to see you in the building, buddy. We also have Geoff Totten says, evening, guys. Got crappy internet tonight, so we'll be slow in responding.
Yeah, me too.
We all have them problems, my man. Every single one of us. You think this day and age, internet would be lightning quick. Well, it is where Jack is. Maybe we all need to move to Seattle. Cottle Brown says, afternoon, lads. Morning, Jacko. Big up, Cottle Brown. Good to see you. We also have Singularity. Afternoon, all. Great to see you, lad. Hopefully you're keeping well. We also have Kerry King. Afternoon, all. Looking forward to this one. Come on, you Spurs. Big up, Kerry King. Good to see you. We've got Too Damn Soulful. What a name. Give Thomas Frank time and we will sort out the attack. Yes, we are all over the place up front, lol, but it will come. Yeah, 100%. Look, you know, I think this is something that fans overlook. I mean, maybe we took for granted because we had Kane and Son down the years. We made it look so easy. But scoring goals is the hardest thing to do in football. Creating opportunities is the hardest thing to do in football. That is going to take time. You've got the likes of Simmons, you know, he's fresh in the door. You know, I know everyone came in saying he's this generational talent, but I sort of batted back against narrative. Said it's going to take the kid a little bit time to settle in. That seems to be the case. Kola Moani, I think everyone got excited coming in, but no one realized the guy wasn't up to speed. He wasn't fit enough. So that's going to take time to be able to get him up to speed and blend him in. Then you've also got Kudus, who, look, I think has started very, very well. I really enjoy, you know, watching him, but I would say needs to be a little bit more input. But again, the relationship with the striker and stuff like that, that will all come. It's just going to take a little bit of time. But it's glad to see that everybody is now on my narrative. Last season, people called me absolutely delusional and crazy that I was going on about the forward line. Look at all the goals we're scoring. It says, doesn't matter. It's because Postecoglou's playing them so high up the pitch. When you get another manager that plays them a bit further back, you're going to see how goddamn shit this forward line is. Well, you know, it's definitely a work in progress. I think many people can see that. Dark Zone G also says, it's like how Liverpool beat Burnley 1-0 recently. Honestly, I'm absolutely sick of them. They are so fucking jammy. It's unbelievable. You know, they get all the right decisions at the right time in games to be a help bring them points and everything else. I'm absolutely sick of it. At the end of the day, got the penalty, go and win the game, but it's always them. It's always them. I couldn't believe it. I'm sitting there loving life. You know, Burnley taking a point off them. Next thing I get a notification, you know, and Liverpool have gone and robbed the game. Absolutely ridiculous. Big up, Noel. Good to see you. Let's go, lads. Come on, you Spurs. Big up, Noel. Good to see you. Although, Dax on G, I'd say you're out. I was jumping around the place. Luke at Glen Aspera. I'm not even going to say that. I butchered it. I'm going to say Glen Gaspero. Why do we still have Richie as a striker in the starting 11? Because all of our other strikers are nowhere near fit enough right now. They can't stay
exactly right.
And
that's exactly right.
At what point is Richie going to go down as well? He doesn't have the ability to stay fit either. Skunkworks, afternoon, gents. How are we? Good to see you. Ange Ball, great to see you. Yes, Les, lads, and chat. Big up yourselves every time. And let's go, baby. Come on, you Spurs. Good to see you. We've got Cyprus Spurs in the house. We've got Darren Johnson, cap and pants. Great to see all you guys. Del by Derek Hutchison. Good to see you, buddy. We've got Gabrielle 1. Big up, Steve. I don't drink. I'm on the out. Lucas said, a bit of energy, my man. I've had a bit of a horrible week, you know, some family issues and stuff like that. So I just need some energy today. Big up, Stevie. But I don't drink, unfortunately. But Jack does. Jack does like an out sip. So, you know, maybe you can recommend.
Talk to me in 8 hours.
Beers.
Yeah.
And then we'll take a couple more comments and then we are going to crack on. We've got Ulrika Johnson, only Spurs live chat. I'm hoping Dave will be a bit more positive about my club. Come on, you Spurs. Ulrika Johnson, I think there's an unfair narrative out there put out around me. Don't get me wrong. When there's issues, I will hammer home on the issue, no problem. But no one mentions the love or the praise I give Papa Matasar, the love or the praise I've always given Romero, despite people saying we should sell him, the love and praise I give Vicario, Van de Ven, you know, Jed Spence, people like that, players that I've backed when they weren't popular to back. You know, I think there's a really unfair narrative put out there around me in terms of always being negative. Also, when we win, who sits there with a bigger smile on their face or celebrates it or looks more goofy than me? Absolutely no one, I would argue. So I do think there's a very unfair narrative. But also, I'm not one of these. When things aren't going well, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everything's all rainbow, sunshines and fluffy and great either. I'm not going to do it. If there's problems, I'm going to be the first one to sit there and say, this is a huge problem.
Got to call the right players out.
Exactly. You know, look, I chased
out.
the likes of Dyer, Sanchez, Winks, and everybody out this club. And as soon as they all fucked off, we went and won
We're
a
much
Europa
better.
League.
Yeah.
You know, so for me, I get it, but I think it's a bit of an unfair narrative around me. And to be fair, look, you're well entitled to have your opinion and hit back if you disagree, no problem at all. And we also have George Cardes. This is a good test for Frank. I think it's a very good test there, and we're going to get onto it in a minute. Why? Trinidad says the difference we're all approaching this season is the ability the Frank engine has to learn and adapt depending on the opposition. So today would be a great measure if we beat Brighton. Come on, you Spurs. Absolute spot on there, Trinidad. Good to see you, my man. You from Trinidad and Tobago? Trinidad sort of sounds like Trinidad and Tobago. Let me know. Skunkwork says, last minute, lucky Liverpool have to get beaten at some point. Jammy Bees. We have also got Moondog. Good afternoon, lads. Big up, Moondog. Good afternoon to you and Charlie. Hopefully you're all keeping well, buddy. Good to see you in the building. By the way, I do have a link that I need to post for you. You know, when I get a chance next week, he is doing all like Spurs, custom Spurs stuff and stuff like that. So if you are looking for anything for a loved one or even for yourself, This man is the guy to get it done and made and delivered. Big up, Moondog. Good to see you. Wilson T, big up, chaps. Good to see you. Slim Boy Tubbs. We also have Richard Healy Coffee in the house. I remember when Paratici brought in Kulu and Bentacore. What a window that January was. They both were important players for us. Absolutely. And I also remember sitting there against the narrative saying I think they were great signings. But look, I'm very negative. Anyway, big up, Richard. Good to see you. We've also got Nick in the house. He's loving that Marcelo's back. Good to see you, Nick. We also have Mary W in the house. Great to see you. Ulrika Johnson has sent in a super sticker. Do you know what that super sticker is? That probably boxing gloves towards me, no?
She says vibes and then choo choo, Dave. She wants the choo. She wants the.
She's
you got one happy
now.
clapper at least on the panel. At least I tried to be Ulrika. Love the name, by the way. And I mean, I think Dave's right though. Like at the end of the day, you know, he does a fine job of, you know, calling out what he feels like is the problem. But then at the same time, you know, this guy is, you know, ready to run around in his underwear, ready to put on the shades when he's only 1-0 up, you know, at times. So I think, you know, maybe you got the wrong story there. Appreciate you, Eureka, though. Very, very kind. Thank you for the support.
Big up,
I'm not gonna lie, I get negative when we lose. I become a negative bastard.
Yeah, look, we all can. We all can become unhappy.
You know, but like, who enjoys losing? That's what that's what I always ask fans. You know, like if you're just sitting there and you're okay with seeing us spanked week after week, you know, I don't know. I question like what? Like did you just get picked on? I don't know, man. You know.
Look, I'm just not one of them. I'm not one of them that walks away from a game and goes, "Oh well, it's only football," or you know, "Oh well, you know, on another day we would have won." I'm not one of them. Look, I will concede. Look, I've had a lot of sort of family issues this summer and stuff like that. Nearly lost a couple of close family members to me and stuff like that this year. And I get it. You know, maybe I have maybe been a little bit on the negative side in terms of thinking, you know, the world's against me and stuff like that. I will concede that. However, when it comes to Tottenham, I do think I am firm but fair, I would like to think. Anyway,
of
today
course.
isn't about me, Dave. Today is not about you. Stop making it about you. It's about Tottenham Hotspur. Let's get back to it. Dark Zone G says, Dave, we have a way better squad than the last time. Remember, we played in the Champions League with Dyer, Sanchez, who had howlers recently, Seskip, Perisic, Langley. I mean, you can only dream of keeping a clean sheet with some of that shit that's there.
My goodness. Yeah.
And I think that's the big difference, what we've seen Tuesday night, Dark Zone G. Yeah, didn't play well. I think one thing that no one's speaking about is how big of a loss Paulini is when he doesn't play. That midfield does look open. We can't get got at. Whereas when Paulini is in there, he sort of just shuts all of that down. So I think that's one big miss. But at the end of the day, we got the job done and rested Paulini, which hopefully means come the back end of the season, there's a bit more legs in the guy to be able to push when maybe other teams are tired and stuff like that. But also the ability to be able to keep a clean sheet, played shit, but we won 1-0. I mean, whenever I watched us play shit in the Champions League, we got trounced. I remember getting hammered by Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, teams like that, you know, where we get absolutely hammered and we're non-competitive. I believe we lost to Marseille as well at one point. I mean, you know, teams like Marseille should be beaten anyway, but I think the big difference is this time around, although didn't play well, we still shown the ability to be able to win at the top level, at the highest level. And I think that's a good indictment of our defensive structure. And I think it's a good indictment of the team. And a good team, if you don't play well, you get wins. You put points on the board. That's something that Roy Keane has always said, and I always stand by. Good teams, when they don't play well, they still find a way to get a result. And that's exactly what we done, Dark Zone G. So I was just a bit surprised about a lot of the reaction online after. In general, I just thought people would have been a bit more positive. Last season, people were sitting there on their knees begging, like praying to the Lord, please have a clean sheet. Now we've got one. People are automatically going to the forward like, yeah, but it's not entertaining. It's like, yeah, but takes time. We all knew this when Thomas Frank came in. You're gonna have to give
but what do you want? Yeah, like you know, like but what do you want though, right? Last season we had, you know, the last couple seasons we had, you know, swashbuckling forward foot football. Granted, we didn't have much of a defense, and people were complaining that we couldn't play defense. And now all of a sudden we're actually structured and organized, and we're a little bit more of a counterattacking team with actual talent in the forward line. Well, soon to be, as soon as a couple people get caught up, and now all of a sudden it's a problem. You know, what exactly do you want?
We also got to remember that there's a lot of players, and also Thomas Frank himself, who's inexperienced in the Champions League.
It was
that was his first Champions League game ever. So you got to consider that. You know, he's a manager himself. He's developing. Yes, in the Premier League, I expect him to get most of his tactics right because he's been in the league for years. But when it comes to the Champions League, you're facing these Spanish teams, you're facing these Italian teams, you're facing these German clubs. They play very different styles, and you got to get your tactics right because it's only one game. You got to remember that. It's not like a league match where maybe you get a draw. All right, we'll go at home and we'll beat Sunderland or whatever. It's not like that. The Champions League is a little bit more tricky.
Right.
The teams play a little bit differently. They don't play as the same. You got to get your tactics a little bit more spot on. A win and a loss is much more crucial. You drop a point or three, it can mean you're out of the group.
Yeah.
So getting 3 points is massive. So I,
Right.
I don't get this whole narrative with Frank. Like, don't get me wrong, I love attacking football.
We all do.
We all do.
Even Jack does.
I
He
love.
plays pragmatic football. Even Jack loves it when it's played well.
Yeah, like I love the just playing freely, but you got to understand, in order to get that attractive footy, in order to get that fluid system, you got to give the manager time, to
Yeah.
get his
Right.
tactics and his philosophy. It's not going to be in a day or a week or a month, or it's
Right.
going to take a year and more.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you as well, I think many people would have had Villarreal down as one of them. Could be difficult on the night. We'd take a draw. The fact that we got 3 points out of it, even though it was difficult for us, I think, puts us
They've
in
won
good
our
stead
Europa
moving
League.
forward.
They've knocked out clubs like Arsenal. They've knocked out clubs like, what was it, Man United. They've knocked out a lot of big clubs, man. They're not this, I remember they reach a semi-final with Unai Emery, and then they
They
got
won it
knocked
with
out by
Unai
Bayern
Emery.
Munich.
They've
No,
won
but
the
in the
Europa League, I
Champions
believe.
League. In
Oh,
the
in the
Champions League.
Champions League, maybe, yeah.
I,
Yeah.
yeah, I
They knocked
remember
out
they
Bayern
reached.
Munich, yeah.
Yeah, bro. Like, this isn't like some run-of-the-mill team. They've had
Yeah.
experience. Yeah, you gotta understand. It takes
Yeah.
time to get to this level. Get to this
Yeah.
level.
Also, I don't care how the win comes. I just want to stack wins up. At the end of the day,
Right.
Mhm.
last year was loss after loss after loss, and I was absolutely miserable. Every weekend it was ruined, even midweek, absolutely ruined, by the latter stages of Europe and stuff like that. So for me, I'm just going to enjoy the wins as they come. I've learned since Pochettino's exit, that you don't take wins for granted at Tottenham Hotspur. You got to
Yeah.
enjoy them
Yep.
while they're here, because you can very well slip up with the next game around the corner, which we're going to get onto now. Just bear with us. Big up, though, Dark Sung G. Really appreciate support. And the talking point, my man. Moondog says, I'm going 4-0 today. Romero, first goal. I mean, this guy's been so unlucky. How many goals has he had ruled out already this season?
Yeah.
Absolutely ridiculous. Like, the one the other day was absolutely farcical as well. I mean,
Oh,
look, I'm not
yeah.
even going to get into it. Today's not the time or that. I guarantee I'll have another one by halftime to be able to get onto referees about today anyway. But 4-0 away from home, Moondog is maybe thinking the opposite to me, that off the back of maybe a lackluster performance, Spurs are going to go and win big today, which is very interesting. Who's your goal scorers, though? Because I remember there a couple of years ago, you used to win me quite a bit of money, actually, Moondog, with some of your guesses and stuff like that. So who are the goal scorers? Do let me know. Big up, Moondog. The Big D's also in the house. Constructive criticism is all it is. Hard but fair. I really appreciate that. Look, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I can get animated and stuff like that, but that's just a passion in me. Like, absolutely love this football club. I fucking live for it. That's just the passion that comes out of me, my man. But I like to think I'm hard but fair, firm but fair. And look, don't get me wrong. Sometimes I can come up with nicknames like Moon Boots, and sometimes they stick. But that's not my fault. I enjoy them. It's the players' fault for not combating against the narrative and proving me wrong. But big up the Big D. Good to see you. And then we also have Darren Kyogan in the house. Big up, Darren. He says good teams can stay in the game even when they're getting battered and somehow get a chance of winning. When you're shipping goals for fun, you have absolutely no chance. You're absolutely spot on. I think that was, one of the main problems last year compared to this year. Absolutely spot on. Big up, Darren. Where are you from, Darren? That's a very Irish name you've got going on there, lad. But look, guys, I mean, maybe contrary to Moondog here, but Marcelo, we'll start with you. I have to be honest, this game feels like Bournemouth all over again, where we beat Man City and then fell apart in the next game against Bournemouth. We've just beaten Villarreal. Do you worry we're walking into the same sort of trap again today? A big win followed by sort of a flat performance from Tottenham Hotspur. Because I know people aren't happy with the performance, but winning the Champions League is still a big win. It's an emotional occasion. And we've seen, we can go and beat City, but then the next game we turn up, everyone's expecting us to play well, go and win the game, and we're just shit.
Yeah, and we've also seen times where we've played shit and then we go and play really well.
Fair.
And we played pretty crap against Villarreal, if I'm gonna be honest. The performance was a little lackluster, but we got the win. And the most important thing is getting the win, keeping the confidence up. I think the players are confident. They are buying into Frank's system more and more. And I think today it's going to be an interesting challenge. I think Brighton is going to be a really tough team because they're going to go at us like Bournemouth. And I think they have a little bit more quality up front with Mente
Yeah.
and Mitoma
Welbeck is a good finisher as
and
well.
Welbeck. Yeah, so they got some really good players, some really tricky players. What's going to be interesting is that Thomas Frank said that he learned a lot from that Bournemouth game. So I would really be interested to see what adjustments he does make, specifically on the counters and the transitions, because there was a lot of times we did have good opportunities against Bournemouth in the final third, but our forward line just it's like they chose the complete wrong decision, the wrong pass, or it was too overhit. So
Seems to happen a lot, though, doesn't it?
it does, and is Thomas Frank really at fault for that? I don't think so. I think that's just a lack of quality. But I also think he could change his lineup, but he has done that. I've said, he should play Bergvall, he should play Xavi Simmons, he should play Sarr in that midfield, and he has done so. I think for this game, though, it's going to be a little interesting because do you want to go a little bit more open and risk getting, spread out by Brighton? I probably don't think so. I think this game, we should go a little bit more compact, and I would like to see him adjust to that and figure out how do we get to that transition in that final third, because it's difficult, man, because right now it's only Xavi and Kudus that really I can see breaking that line.
Yeah. Yeah, it is becoming a problem. But you know what? I look at Kudus and I look at Xavi, and I sort of think there is only so long you can keep these lads quiet before it starts eventually clicking and stuff like that. But Stevie, I mean, me and you were having a bit of a conversation yesterday about this exact topic, that we were maybe a bit worried, about maybe us being a bit flat today off the back of an emotional win, a big win, Tuesday night in the Champions League. We've seen it before.
Yeah, and these are the lessons that I wonder if this squad has actually learned. Number one, it's keeping your emotions in check because you're playing every 3 days, and there is that there is that inclination to be a little too high or be a little too low, considering that you wonder whether or not there is actually appropriate rest from match to match. That's the first one, but also the second one actually is particular to Thomas Frank because he got let's not kid ourselves, he got out coached by Royale in that Bournemouth game. And I think some of that squad selection was a little sketchy in that one, which I think had a direct.
Was it out? Was it out?
Hold on, a little bit, because Bournemouth was getting forward with ease in that match. Now, granted, I think our defensive line stepped up a little bit, but that being said, now you're going up against a coach like Fabian Hurtzler, who is actually, again, a very, very, very good coach. And that team, now, granted, they do have some nice players, but it's not like they have the most upper echelon talent in the league, but yet that team plays together, that team presses together, that team makes life difficult on opponents, especially at home. And we talk about bogey teams all the time. This almost kind of feels like Brighton's kind of our bogey team against us, right? And so the question is whether or not did Thomas Frank learn those lessons from Bournemouth? Did the players learn that lesson from Bournemouth? Because if they had, I would probably expect that this team is probably going to come out firing on all cylinders. But that being said, you also have to give respect to Brighton because they know exactly how to approach this match. And that's kind of the concern for me.
But that's the concern for me heading into today's game, because one thing Bournemouth done, I think, pretty well is they went man for man on our midfield. They didn't allow us time to get the ball into Bentancur for them to progress it.
Yep.
Now, last year, that was a huge problem because many people, it was something that I was sick of hearing last year, was plan B, plan B, plan B. However, I think we did have a plan B that game. We went long. We tried to go long, but Johnson kept on losing the ball. Richarlison kept on losing the ball. And that's where I sort of struggled to blame Thomas Frank, because we've circumvented a way around it. You know, it's obviously something that we've worked on in the training ground just in case that does happen. It's not his fault Richarlison couldn't hold up the ball. It's not his fault Johnson is in acres of space and flicking it away and giving it away and stuff like that. That's where I do blame the players. Don't get me wrong. Iraola came with a very good tactic in order to stifle us, and it worked on the day. But I think Frank tried a way around it. It's just the players really sort of failed to execute. And that's, again, my big worry today. It's not actually so much around Thomas Frank. Don't get me wrong. I am worried that Brighton will come and press us. They probably will go man for man on the midfield. Again, like Bournemouth done to us and cause us a lot of problems. But today, we do need that front line to show the ability to be able to hold up the ball, get turn, run at them, and create stuff off it. And then if they learn to do that, then all of a sudden, Brighton go, ooh, we better sit in here for a little while, and then you can gain possession and start playing through your midfield and stuff like that. But, you know, that's why I sort of blame the players for Bournemouth, and that's why I'm worried a little bit about today, you know. Sometimes when you're so geared up, big emotional return to the Champions League, what you get the job done, all of a sudden the game on the weekend, Brighton away, doesn't seem so appealing as the big night under the lights. And that's my big worry with these players. You know, when we go into Man City every single season, we're going to get absolutely smashed up. We beat them. Then the next game, you're like, right, let's go back to back. Let's get another positive result. And we're absolutely shocked. And we end up, you know, we're all over the shop. We end up getting beaten. That's my big problem with this squad right now. Do they have the ability to show
it's the repeated patterns that we see every season
on a fixture that's not so glamorous?
Exactly. And that was the issue with 2 seasons ago and last season as well too. Emotionally, you're going to get up for the Liverpools, the Cities, and some of these big matches, and then you turn around and be like, "Well, it's only Brighton, or it's only Leeds, or it's only whatever the case may be," and all of a sudden you have a shambolic result. When otherwise you probably the talent would suggest that you should probably play them off the pitch.
100%. And like we've all done there, we've all played Sunday League and stuff. You know, the big games come around, your local rivals, you're fucking waking up like that. You know, the next thing you're playing the worst team in the league, you're like, I'll take the piss today. You know what I mean? We've all been there. We're all human. But Jack, is this about the mentality of the players, or is it on Thomas Frank and his staff to get them emotionally and tactically right after such a big game and then maybe not such a glamorous fixture on the weekend?
I think just a lot of teams underestimate Brighton, mostly because they're just not the sexiest team on paper, but they do have better players than most people probably realize, because a lot of their players, you know, are being trained in Belgium at like Union Saint-Gilloise. I think that's like their sort of feeder club, like what Chelsea have at Strasbourg. They have a bunch of guys that you don't really know who they are, but are actually secretly very good players on their day. And then usually they have a pretty sound manager who knows what he's doing in the Premier League and can be able to figure out teams. And I just think they're always been one of those sides that, a bit like Bournemouth to a degree right now, where they're not an attractive team to want to play. It's not like they're going to fill out your stadium and be someone that you're looking forward to playing, you know, each week. But I think they can be a lot trickier than people realize. In a sense, Brentford were also one of those teams. You know, when Thomas Frank was there, it wasn't really a team that you would be excited to play against, but at the same time, you kind of knew that they were going to give you a difficult match. I would say, though, that even though you guys are right to praise their team this year in terms of the quality of the players, I mean, this season, though, I would say they have been significantly weakened. Like, they've lost Joao Pedro, they've lost Evan Ferguson.
That
even
is
though
very
Evan Ferguson was, you know, I know he was kind of a little bit in the background, but he's still a good backup player to have, and they haven't really replaced him yet. Estupinian, they also lost as well. I think that guy, Carlos Baliba, hasn't even been playing because, you know, he was twerking for a move for Man United. Pascal Gross is left. Like, you know, I think their team has been weakened. So in a sense, I think they're kind of going through a new cycle here. But knowing Brighton, they probably have already replaced them.
Yeah, they replaced them.
We don't even know who these guys are yet. Like, they're just a bunch of new names on the paper that even me, you know, being an absolute nerd, probably don't even know who these guys are yet. But just want to say that and mention that. I don't want to make it sound like this game's easy or anything, but I do feel like they are, to a degree, pretty weakened. You know?
I agree. The only thing caveat that with is I said that going into the Bournemouth game, they lost they lost their goal.
They're like the best
they lost more or less the whole back line, and we couldn't even barely get a shot on target. You know,
you know what
Bournemouth
it is
in a way are playing better than they did last year. That's the irony.
You know what
it is with
Brighton. I was going to say Brighton just keeps on fighting, right? If you guys saw that City game from earlier in the season, right, where, you know, City grabs that early 1-0 lead, and all of a sudden they just keep fighting, and sure enough, they end up walking away with the 2-1 win, right? You can, like, Jack, your point is valid, right? They actually have a huge turnover, yet for whatever reason, that mentality has kind of stayed with all those guys that are plugging those holes, right? That's the concern for me, right? That team is going to be up for it.
that is what their model is built off as well, though. Let's not forget where it is built, that they find these players, they come in, they excel, they sell them on for big money, and they've shown they can,
and they're consistent.
Exactly.
That's the thing about them. They're just so consistent. So like, I expect Brian to come in with a strong team. You know, regardless, they've done it over and over again. And these clubs that, you know, they have that money ball system is almost like they do it even better than the big clubs in the Prem, you know, with finding these talents. I don't know how they do it, honestly.
No, look, and that's the thing, and I would argue, you know, it seems to be like, oh, you know, I look at it every year, I'm like, oh, Brighton could be in trouble this year, and they end up getting better and better each year, you know, and it is, they have shown that weird ability that, you know, selling their best players, they've just got the next guys ready in line to come in and sort of take up the mantle. But to Jack's point, I mean, they are weakened compared to last season, maybe not as much danger in the front line and stuff like that, and there is an opportunity for us to go here and take all 3 points. At the end of the day, if we want to be this big club or this big six club that we keep saying we are, you got to be beating Brighton home and away, regardless of, you know, how decent they are. We'll take a couple more comments here from the chat, and then we are going to kick on. We've got Ulrika Johnson. I remember tuning into your channel when we drew 2-2 with PSG, and Dave was hating on the team we drew. It the best team in Europe needs more balance in post-match comments. Look, I think that's a fair comment to make, and I fully understand that. I think where my disappointment more so was the players that actually came off the bench. I was more than happy with every player that started and played the majority of that game. My disappointment was like Matisse Tal coming off the bench. All he had to do was put in a bit of effort, go and press the ball, and just not allow PSG to, you know, have easy access at our goal and at our box and put crosses in. The guy refused to move. You know, that's where I got angry. Dom Solanke came on. Done absolutely nothing. Couldn't hold up, you know, a fucking piece of paper. It was absolutely embarrassing. You know, I just think the subs really let us down that day. And then that brought me on to squad depth. And where I got angry was we had 3 months. We knew that was a trophy on offer. Why didn't we get a player or two in sooner? So that maybe on the night we could have made the changes to be able to get over the line and put that trophy in the cabinet. That was
just the manner that we lost as well.
Exactly.
You know, 10 minutes to go. It was so Spursy. I hate to say the word, but it was. You know, we blew it away. We had a 2-0 lead, and we blew it in 10 minutes, which, you know, was something that we really hope was gone from this squad after winning a trophy, that they had that mentality to shut down the game in the final at a 2-0. But there's obviously work that still needs to be done. And, you know, it's not negative. It's just like, come on, you know, you're 2-0 up and you lose. Like,
well, and it's also
I was screaming.
It was also the quality of the quality of PSG's players coming off the bench versus the quality that were coming off our bench. Right, there is a massive discrepancy. Those what they're bringing off the bench is class.
There is, but hard work, you know.
You're 2-0 up. Exactly.
You're bringing fresh players off the bench. If they don't want to run around and they don't want to sacrifice themselves for a trophy, I'm sorry, I have a problem with that at Tottenham.
Yeah.
Look, in general, very proud of the performance. We competed on the night a lot better than what I thought we would. But after the game, my frustrations did come in with the bench and the club not acting sooner to get a couple of players in for this fixture, knowing there was a cup opportunity to put in the cabinet. That was all, Ulrika. But I do take your point. I think it's a fair criticism to make. Darren Kyogan says a dub blow in 20 years living in Carlisle, only down the road from me, Darren. Only down the road from me. I'm in Kildare, Newbridge, Kildare. Skunkworks says only one rule, Dave. Eyes must be bigger than the belly. That's when he's ordering his food after the game. Big up, Skunkworks. We've also got Jason Green in the house. Good to see you. So big up, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. I can see a big win today. Vicario, Paulo Romero, Van de Ven, Spence, Paulinho, Bergwall, Simmons, Johnson, Kudus, and Colin Moani as his starting lineup. Look, I wouldn't rule out Thomas Frank making changes. It is something that he seems to do from game to game. Big up, Paddy Higgins. Good to see you, buddy. Hopefully you're keeping well. Afternoon, lads. Hope everyone's keeping well. Good to see you, buddy. And hopefully life is treating you good. I haven't seen you in a while, my man. Then we've also got K32. Big up, Kieran. Says, love this channel and hope all family get well soon, Dave. That really appreciate that. Really, do you know what? First of all, I just want to say a massive thank you to all you guys out there and everyone that helps out with the shows because, you know, look, you know, I have had it tough the last while and people have stepped in my absence to help keep this going, mainly helping Jack out, but also huge credit to Jack. You know, it's not easy waking up going, look, Jack, you know, something's have to happen. I can't make it today. And then all of a sudden plans are out the window and Jack has to sort of reconvene and navigate them and stuff like that. So huge credit to him. Huge thank you to all you guys out there, and a huge thank you to everybody who does step in my absence to keep the channel going. So I really appreciate it, and I don't take it for granted. So really thank you very much, guys. And yeah, look, you know, I hope all the family will get better. Just it's one of them. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be a long road to recovery, but with me around, I'm going to make sure they fucking get there. Big up, Kieran. Really appreciate support. But I just want to say that because it's not something I don't like coming on here and airing all my problems and stuff like that. But I've never really actually said a massive thank you to all you guys and Jack and all the people that help out to keep it going. So I really do appreciate all of you guys. But Jack, back to you. I mean, Brighton away is one of them fixtures I just hate. We've lost both of we lost both games under Ange Postecoglou up there. I remember 3-1 under Pochettino. I think that was sort of towards the end of his time as well. It's been a difficult place to go. Brighton are not the kind of team you can be 90% against. They will punish you if you are slightly off it. What is it about Brighton that gives us such a hard time? Is it the tactics, the mentality, or just a bit of bad luck over the years? What is it? Because this is becoming a bit of a difficult fixture for us to navigate.
I think they just catch you by surprise. Like maybe I mentioned earlier, I think they have always a good manager. They always have secretly good players. It's not a Real Madrid where your players are just getting motivated just by the name on the sheet. You know, some of the players that they're coming up against most of the time, like I said before, you don't really know who they even are. You know, they're usually fresh, you know, to the Premier League. So they're not even really aware who, you know, is the danger sometimes in their teams. Maybe now you could say they have a bit more of some established players that have been there for a while, but usually it's always guys that are like only been in the league for 1 or 2 seasons, which can be tricky. I think, you know, that can often mean then that even just when you're scouting the opposition side or when you're trying to figure out where their weaknesses are, it's hard because some of the guys are just so new to the league that they have a bit of that fresh factor to them where you just don't know what to expect really. And I think it's just one of those fixtures for some reason, maybe has caught us at the wrong time. Maybe it's just been at, you know, some games where maybe Spurs are going through a tough spell and they just seem to catch us out for it. And I don't know, maybe because of Tony, why am I forgetting? Tony Bloom. Why am I forgetting his name? The Brighton owner. Yeah, he maybe because of his relationship with Daniel Levy and you know, maybe some of the, you know, the hate that he has for the guy. Maybe he's, I don't know, given bonus incentives to beat Spurs. I'm not too sure really, but it's always been tough for us mentally and even quality. There've been just so many games where they've just absolutely outplayed us. I think the only time I can remember us beating them somewhat convincingly was with Harry Kane under the Antonio Conte era. I remember those were the games where we actually were able to get past them relatively easily.
No, 100%. Big up, Mark. Good to see you. It's just, I just hate this fixture. It's like they're always fit. They always seem to be a very fit, mobile sort of side, regardless of who's in charge. Very rarely you sort of catch Brighton off on an off day. It's a very difficult. But Jack, again, follow up. If you were Thomas Frank today, what would you say in the dressing room to ensure that there is a focus heading into today's game? And which players would you target maybe that has to lead that sort of mentality?
I think it's about, I don't know, you know me, Dave, I like to stay defensively solid. I think this game really is about, you know, trying to just stay in the game and just be defensively solid. I'd imagine that the Amex Stadium is, no place is easy to go, as you know the cliche goes, but I don't think they're probably that difficult of an atmosphere to come up against. I think it's probably just about not letting the game get away from you, and that's usually the benefit of being a defensive side, is that you might be playing worse than the opposition team, but if it's still 0-0 at halftime, you're still very much in the game, and you can try to nick one here and there. That's what I would probably be saying to the players: is stay compact, work hard off of the ball, don't let each other, you know, slip, you know, hold each other to the high standards that Frank seems to do when it comes to fitness and being able to work off of the ball. So I'd be looking at the midfield, you know, try to bully this Brighton midfield, try to have guys like Sarr, Bergvall do what they've been doing. Palhinha set the tone with a few crunching tackles. Romero and Van de Ven don't do anything stupid, you know, and I'd be more saying to the midfield as well as to the defense to, in a way, continue what they've been doing, because maybe the attack hasn't necessarily been the best so far, but the midfield and the defense has been the shining light. So I would just hone in on that and, in a way, get the last good juices of performances out of them before we probably make a lot of changes ahead of the Doncaster Rovers game. That's what I was kind of saying in the predicted lineup. I think this is Thomas Frank's opportunity to probably go with a version of you know, we'll get into the lineups later, so I'm not going to spoil it, but I don't think I'd expect him to repeat a lot of the same players that he used with Villarreal, that he used with West Ham, because against Doncaster, you think he's probably going to make a lot of rotations. So, pick the guys that he really trusts for this game to set that tone, like you brought up in the question there.
100%. And I think the players that you sort of target, you obviously go after your captain, someone like Christian Romero. Speak to him like you said. Let's get the win over, and a lot of you guys can have Tuesday night off. Go and shag the missus, have dinner. I don't care what you do. Watch the game if you want on telly, but just do something different rather than, be at the game. Have a bit of time off. I think that's absolutely important. So I think you got to get into Romero. I think Pedro Porro is another one. Can be a bit vocal. Vicario, they're the three players. Maybe a Paulinho or a Bentancur as well that I'd be getting into to sort of drive the narrative. Get at players. Get them to speak to the likes of Kudus, Simmons. Players like that, some of the newer guys who maybe don't have as much to say around the place, sort of get into them and just make sure they're on point today and say, look, guys, let's go and get the job done, and we can all head out Tuesday night, Wednesday night, while the rest of the guys pick up the slack and stuff like that. But that's exactly what I'm doing. Absolutely spot on, Jack. Marcelo, we'll come to you.
Yes.
Spurs have won both of our away Premier League games this season without conceding, but Brighton have been strong at home, losing just once in their last 10 at the Amex. Can Spurs keep that away record going and silence the crowd? And which players do you think are absolutely key to controlling the tempo at the Amex today?
Well, you know me, I'm always going to go with my boy Romero. Cutie. I think he's just, he's such an icon. He's such a leader. He can set a tempo of a game. But honestly, I'm gonna throw a surprise one here. I think Jack mentioned it. I think Paulinho. I think he's gonna be very critical to controlling that midfield and making sure Mente doesn't just run right through us. Because I remember the last game with Brighton when we played them against Amex, they just ran right through our midfield quite often, and I think Paulinho is going to be critical to preventing that from happening. As well, I think Xavi Simons. I think today could be a day where he can shine. He's going to get a lot of space. He is going to get hopefully attacking opportunities to score and create. Brian do like to play that open style. So, if you look at our first game, West Ham, very defensive team. Villarreal, defensive team. While Brighton, more of an attacking team. So this could be a game where we can see his creative flair and talent shine.
No, 100%. 100%. And look, it'd be interesting. I do agree with you. I think Paulinho is absolutely crucial. I think, and we're going to get on and have this conversation in just a while, but I do think it should be a Paulinho Bentancur sort of double pivot today. I just think with Bergwall, and I think Frank alluded to it in his press conference, we're going to get on to it, but he does leave a lot of gaping holes in the midfield because he does like to run out of there, sort of get forward, which isn't a bad thing. It's good having that youthful energy, but I think today against Brighton, in order so we're not so susceptible being hit the other way, I do think Paulinho is absolutely crucial. I think having Bentancur in there, if we can, to try and get him on the ball, sort of slow things down or quicken things up, whatever's needed, I think is going to be absolutely crucial. I think that midfield is crucial because, to be honest with you, I made the case last year. I think we have good players across the back line. I think it's a very good back line. Title winning, we'll get on to it and have a conversation around it. But I think last year, one of the big things for me was we had no midfield. We couldn't sustain attacking pressure because we didn't have the ability to win second balls or pick up clearances and stuff like that. But also teams just ran right at us and left our back line completely exposed. It just got our back line time and time again. And that's why I think Bentancur and Paulinho are absolutely crucial in terms of controlling this game for Tottenham Hotspur, dictating the tempo. And once we can get on the ball and dictate the tempo, we should force them back and go and win games. However, though, Stevie, Brighton do press high. They lead the league in pressing metrics this season, meaning they don't let you breathe on the ball. But if we can get through that first sort of press, they do leave a lot of space in behind from the games that I've watched this season. So what way would you rather see Spurs play today from the off? Do you think we should go long early and look to stretch them in behind? Or do you think we should stick to what we've been trying to do, which is get on the ball and play through the midfield?
I think it could be a combination of both. That being said, Jack was mentioning, players that are worth targeting. And I think this actually kind of plays into this one, right? Because they actually have two outside backs. One of them is Dwayne DeKuyper on the left side, who I absolutely love. I think he's an absolutely phenomenal young left back. But if we think that Mohamed Kudus is class, we put him in that category. This would be an absolute match for him to feast on. Against a young left back. So you can be direct up the flanks, or you can actually go long and allow a guy like Kudus to use his pace and physicality to actually have to actually beat DeKuyper on those 1v1s on the outside. Same thing with Xavi Simons on the left side as well too, especially in the buildup. If you want to be a little bit more direct through the midfield, you can. If you're playing it off to the left, because I think they have Veltman on the left as well on the right side right there too. Another opportunity where that can be exploited, especially if you want to go long, because again, he still has that type of pace and class where he can actually beat his man. But the other guy is also centrally in their defense, and it's not Dunk, it's Van Heck, the young center back, who is in a position where I think listen, I like him a lot, but but
there is a mistake in him.
That's exactly right. So there's actually plenty of matchups. If you want to play the ball deep centrally, especially if you want to get runs from a guy like Lucas Bergvall, like we saw in that matchup against West Ham, where you see that kind of those little fearless runs, and if you're going to be playing it deep, those are also possibilities as well too. But also remember that in that match against West Ham, we saw a lot of inverted runs by Xavi in the central areas, right, where we actually had good link-up play from the back. And centrally, and essentially when that happened, defenses collapsed and it made everybody open on the wings as well too. So from that standpoint, I think it actually can be a mixture of both. But that being said, I mean, I guess the question is do you think in an early portions of the match, do you want to take that risk playing long, or be a little bit more direct, or is that something that you wait until after we score the first goal to take those kind of chances long? You know what I mean?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting one. I think, obviously, first of all, I think we should try and play through the press. But I think you'll learn very quickly whether you're going to have trouble doing that or not. And I think If you do have trouble, that's when you do revert and go, okay, we're going to put it long in behind that press. You got Kudos. So, I mean, that guy, you could shoot a missile at him from 2 yards away. He's going to hold it up and stop it. He's absolutely unbelievable. Xavi Simons, again, maybe not the strongest of players, but I do believe he's a guy you can put the ball into his feet and he'll pick you up something. Richarlison is my main concern. He's either absolutely excellent and on point all game long, or he's one of the most frustrating people in the world to watch. And that's where my big problem comes in. But for me, if I was Thomas Frank, just purely out of consistency for the first one, I'll be hammering Kudus aside as the out ball, long balls in behind, stretch them.
Yeah.
If he can't play through the press, that's the way I'd be looking at it today. But I think first and foremost,
by the way, I got to ask this question: are we certain that Thomas Frank can adjust from being married from playing out of the back? That's one of the concerns that I've had over the last couple of matches. It seems like he's continuously trying to hammer that home playing out of the back, which actually leads the press, which actually is why we're getting pressed so high up, right? So the ability to actually have long goal kicks and kind of mix it up a little bit, because it just seems to me that that's something that he's kind of married to a little bit.
I don't mind that though. Like, if you look at a lot of the big clubs, they all dominate possessions. They're all capable of playing that ball out from the back line into the midfield and stuff like that. Don't get me wrong, we're not as good as some of the teams like that we're trying to compete against. But I think they're the games where maybe you mix it up on them and go long against them, sort of stick it on them. But I think games like this, if we want to be one of them big teams, we do have to establish, ourselves in terms of on the game by doing this. But I think the beautiful thing about football is, I think if it doesn't work, then you resort to plan B. You go longer and stuff like that. And I think that's the good thing about this man. He's not wedded to just trying to play out from the back. I get he's trying to, be that as an element, because at Brentford, I think his team's had some of the lowest possession stats in the league. That's not going to fly at
some of the most
HOTSPUR.
goals.
It's
Sure.
but it's not going to fly at HOTSPUR.
That was the issue against Bournemouth, though, wasn't it? Wasn't that the issue against Bournemouth?
I get what you're saying, but he did switch it up. He did start going long. Vicario went long. A lot of the centre backs went long. Porro went long with the ball. At the end of the day, if your 4 players can't hold up the ball, you're never going to get out. And that's the big problem, because they just turn the ball over and keep coming back. And at that point, if you can't play through the middle and you can't go a long ball, what can you do? That's why the Bournemouth game. That's why the Bournemouth game happens. People really undervalue the ability of a forward player to be able to hold up that ball and play people in. Sometimes you can't always play it through. Sometimes you do have to go long, and that's where you that's where you're paying a lot of your money. Someone that can sit up against two big 6'4" guys, show that ability to be able to hold up the ball and lay people in, and that way you get out, you get at them. And once you start doing that, all of a sudden they have to start dropping the press because the long ball is so dangerous, and then it allows you the ability then to be able to get on the ball, play, and take the game to them. But if we don't show the ability to be able to hold up these balls that are going on, because there's no excuse for it. Kudus can do it every time. I've seen that ball being rocketed at the guy, chest high, still holds it up. Why can't other players do it? And that's a huge problem. You need to be able to have the players to be able to execute a lot of these game plans. And I think that's where our problem came in against Bournemouth. I do think Frank tried to do something different. It just didn't work on the day.
I don't think, Steve, he can fix everything overnight. Like, he's decided to fix the defense first and foremost, and then later I think he will look to try to develop a bit more of how
he
we
said
build
they were
out
working
from
on
the
it all this week, isn't it? That's something they were working on specifically this week, Jack.
Probably. And I just don't expect him to be able to fix everything overnight. And then I think the issue at Spurs, though, is like, it's not like other clubs. Like, you have to also get results at the same time while trying to instill your philosophy, which is a very difficult thing to do. Like, you have to figure out how to still win the game, but then also you want to be training on things off of the pitch as well. You can't sort of be a Bournemouth or a Brighton in a funny sense, where you can just sort of, instill your philosophy, lose a few games, no one will notice. Like, people will notice if you lose games at Spurs. And also, I think since it's such a massive club, the players will lose faith in the manager if you are dropping results, and trying to give the Russell Martin cliches of like, oh, we're trying to, develop this philosophy, blah, 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 blah. Like, I think Spurs is too big of a club to try to do that. Like, you have to get results at the same time. And just quickly on Dave's point about when you sometimes just have to go long, there are plenty of teams that will press you so intensely and put so many players in your half when you're trying to build out from the back. Oftentimes, maybe that is just the best solution, because look at even Bodo Glimt, like Ange Postecoglou, a guy that is married to playing out from the back. Against Bodo Glimt, I mean, Dave, I could be wrong, but I remember a lot of that times against Bodo Glimt, we were just getting it launched to Richie and Solanke, and it worked. It actually caught them out. So I think there are plenty of times where it, like Bournemouth, where if they're just pressing you that well and that intensely, it is the solution. You have to just go route one, and then hopefully you can win those aerial duels, hold the ball up, and then all of a sudden you'll find yourself with a few 3-on-2s, 2-on-1s. And we just failed to do that because Richarlison and Brennan Johnson were absolutely hopeless in that game and doing it. But
And
I think it's something I think now in modern football, people are just seem to turn their nose up at that approach sometimes of, just getting it launched up to the striker. But there's a reason it works.
But the sign of a good team, though, is a team that can do a bit of everything. A team that can sit in when needed to soak up and alleviate, the pressure. A team that can get on the ball when the opportunity presents itself and go and play and cut teams open. But also a team that, if teams do throw up something unexpected, like Bournemouth did, where they came and pressed us man for man, you have the ability to then be able to go along, punish them that way. That's the sign of a good team. And for me, that's where we need to get at. There's more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. Cat lovers, don't come after me. It's just an expression. But at the end of the day, there's more than one way to play football. There's more than one way to win a game. But a good team, needs to show these little facets in every game. There's going to be periods where we will sit back, soak up pressure. There's going to be periods where we'll go direct, and there's going to be periods where we're going to hold on to the ball and look to play a little. But a good team can adjust to whatever the situation is in the game.
And also to allude, just to allude to what Jack said, in modern football, you can't just do this whole philosophy thing. You look at Ruben Amorim, you look at Ange right now, the pressure of just following this one philosophy, even if it means losing games, it doesn't buy you a lot of time. And for Frank to give himself time to instill his philosophy is by winning games, whether it'll be ugly or pretty. And right now he just has to win games and develop his philosophy and his strategy at the training pitch and slowly integrate that into the pitch. I think it's, football, it's very cutthroat. As much as you want to be expressive, you want to attack. If we went and expressed ourselves against Villarreal and lost 3-0, people would have probably been more frank out than some of these crazy people are now. It's some people. I don't know. I think you can't win with some people, in my opinion, as well.
Yeah.
Well, that was
That's
kind of my
nature.
point, though, right? Because the last thing I want is for this club to look one-dimensional. And
Yeah.
that was my point by asking that question, right?
Yeah.
Because I believe we actually do have the talent where we actually can show different looks and
100%.
still be able to get those results.
100%. I think we're built for it. We've got some good ballers in the team that we can play. You go back to that PSG game. Ulrika Johnson, go back to the PSG game. The size of our players compared to some of that PSG squad in the box physically. We've done it to a lot of teams already this season. We have the ability to be able to do a bit of both. Now it's just about blending in that forward line. Once we get that forward line going, that will solve so much of our problems in general, because once they're all fit and firing, you can go long. When the confidence is up, these guys will be fucking rainbow flicking it over their head with a long ball. When they get the ball at their feet, they're going to be doing Ronaldo step overs, nutmegs, everything else. You wait and see. It's just about getting this forward line going. Once you get that forward line going, we will be able to do a bit of both, and it will put a lot more points on the board moving forward. But the catalyst of it is that back line and that goalkeeper. I think one goal in our last 4 or 5 games I think we've conceded. I mean, it's a good record to have at the minute. A lot of clean sheets. I just kind of want to take a couple more comments here, and then we're going to get into maybe talking a little bit about squad selection and stuff today. Big up Kev Williams. Long time no see, my man. Hopefully you're keeping well. He's gone 2-1 Spurs. Let's go. Big up, Kev. Good to see you. How are you keeping, my man? We've also got Darius in the house. Big up, Darius. Xavi, first Premier League goal today. I mean, I think a lot of fans are waiting to see that. Mark, good to see you, my man. Hopefully you're keeping well. Big up the General, Stevie Fraser. Good to see you. Lee Moody as well. Good to see you. Hopefully you're keeping well, my man. Says if we do win today, that will create such a good feeling in the squad and push us into the next few games with a positive mindset. Come on, you Spurs. Win today. We're smashing up Doncaster Wednesday night. It's that simple, my man. The wins are just going to keep coming in. We've got Paul Mansbridge. Richie needs to be at the races today, Dave. Absolutely agree with you, my man. Needs to be. Look, pressure's on. Solanke's not too far away. Although he's not available today, he is on the grass training. Moani is going to get up to fitness. The pressure is on Richarlison. It'd be interesting to see how he copes. I would argue, I think Richarlison is a better player when the pressure's off and when there's no pressure on him. I think when the pressure's on, he tends to go and score goals and surprise a lot of people. And then the conversations around them start popping up again. Well, should we keep him and stuff like that? So hopefully he thrives on the pressure. Big up Ghosted. I won't judge Xavi until after Christmas. Same with Moani. There's another international break coming up again. They need a run of games to get going. Big up Shawnee Mannix. Good to see you. He says, it's his 5th Prem game. I'm sure things will improve as we go along. Big up, Maddox. Good to see you. Iceman says, good afternoon, Dave and Jack and the rest of the panel. Hope everyone in the chat is good. Xavi on the score sheet today. Have a feeling. A lot of people going with Xavi on the score sheet today. And we at Spurs TV says, calling people crazy because they were dissatisfied we couldn't complete a pass in the second half is nuts. What game are you talking? What
I think he's talking about Villarreal, but in my opinion, that wasn't down to Frank. That was just down to the players just having a really poor game. I just think there were so many guys that were just guilty of just giving the ball away unnecessarily. We would win the ball back in the midfield and then just give it straight back to Villarreal. There were even times when I love Kudus, but Kudus was pretty wasteful in possession at times when he had a few through balls that he could have played to someone and he just misplaced the pass. Even towards the end there, like Brennan Johnson, it was like the 89th minute or something. He just balloons it out of play when we're in their half, when that was the only time in that situation. You just have to hold on to the ball and not lose it. So the theme of that game for me was just really sloppy possession and poor quality, which I don't think Thomas Frank has much to do with. We saw that under Ange Postecoglou as well. There were a lot of games where we would get into the final third and then we just looked hopeless. And it's not really down to the manager, in my opinion.
What I will say is we are Spurs TV. I do get what you're saying. I think he's responding to Marcelo when he called people crazy or something like that. What I will say is, look, I can understand some of the disgruntlement off the back of Tuesday night, right? I get it. You know, a lot of people saying it was a piss poor performance, lackluster and stuff like that. But I think, you know, we've got short memories. Take yourself back to last season. We couldn't win a game of football. At least even when we're not playing well, we're still winning. And that's the point I'm trying to hammer home. That is the sign.
How many clean sheets have we had this season?
Exactly. But this is what a lot of people asked for last season.
Yeah.
Defensive stability.
I
And
don't
put
get
points
it.
on the board, even if we're not a great side. And that's what we're doing. And I just think I was a little bit surprised. I thought there would have been a bit more of a balanced reaction by people going, look, didn't play well, but job done. 3 points on the board. We move. You know what I mean? Like, if we lost, I get it. I mean, there'd be outrage absolutely everywhere, and I fully understand it. But the fact that we won, I think sometimes you just got to go, look, 3 points in the bag, let's move on, you know. And the fact that we're showing the ability to be able to keep clean sheets, it's putting us in this position. And this is what a lot of fans asked for last season. And I think maybe we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, that we think we're all this all-encompassing, free-flowing football. We've got Xavi, Simmons, Moani and stuff like that. But the reality is, it's going to take a little bit of time to be able to get to where people want us to be. And that's just the nature of it. That attack has been piss poor for some time. You know, Thomas Frank alluded to it in his pre-match press conference. Again, I'll hammer home on it. No Solanke, no Madison, no Kulusevski. A lot of players that would have formed that sort of fulcrum of the front four last season, all out, not available. It's a whole new front line that he's having to gel together. Some of them only came in on deadline day as well. So I think we do need to show a little bit of patience towards Thomas Frank to sort of get this going. Don't get me wrong. One of my huge concerns with bringing this guy in, could he get, you know, Tottenham into a place where we're playing this sexy football, ripping teams apart, you know, killing them off? Or is he going to be, you know, too defensive? But in fairness to him, I think what I have seen is him try to play a bit more of an aggressive approach than what he had at Brentford. Now it's just about getting that forward line click. And I am going to give him a little bit of time to see if he can do that, because I'm one of them. I do understand scoring goals and creating goals is the hardest thing to do in football. It really is the hardest thing to do in football. You know, you're not talking like everyone can get on the ball on the counter attack with space and play the right pass. When you've got players, you know, sitting in banks of four in front of you, do you have that vision to be able to pick that run out that say Bergvall makes in behind, or, you know, play that killer pass that no one else has? Them players are few and far in between, more so now in modern day football than when I grew up watching football. So it's going to take a little bit of time for this to sort of click. We are Spurs TV. So I hope you understand my point on that. Big up, my man. Good to see you in the house. Also wanted to say big up to Rasta Country. I haven't seen you in a while. How are you keeping us? Wow. We also have Les Know, Morning Chirpy will be Wani's spirit guide to lead him across the ocean of defence for his first goal. I'd love to see him score today. A lot of people are underwhelmed with what he produced when he came on. We also have Kiwi Spurs TV. Good to see you down in New Zealand, my man. Big up. Good to see you. And we are going to move on to a bit about team selection. We're going to start with this from Garby. He says a doggy to start today, lads.
Yes.
Now, look, I did have a question about sort of, will we make changes today or Tuesday night? But the reality is, I think everyone wants to see the changes made Tuesday night, and I think everyone is expecting a more or less full-strength team sort of to go at Brighton today. By the way, big up Daniel Harris as well. People were genuinely upset about Villarreal. We just won a first red. That's a fantastic result against a quality Spanish team. Look, you know, and they have scored a lot of goals at the start of this season, that Villarreal team, and we kept them down to a clean sheet, which is, you know, a blank, which isn't bad, Daniel. But Jack, no, we'll go to you on this one first, Stevie. Actually, I'm coming to Jack a lot today. I've just realised that. Where are we? Let's talk about Destiny Udogie. Many publications, and, you know, to Garb's point, you know, he's calling for it, but I've seen a lot of predicted lineups from publications where they are sort of predicting that Destiny Udogie should come back in today and rest either one of Jed Spence or Pedro Porro. But do you think that risks the defensive solidity by making this change, especially with Brighton, who are a very decent outfit and a team who has caused us problem in years gone by? Like, because for me, I think that is one area that I think Frank is hesitant to sort of change up, given that we think we've kept, 4 clean sheets in our last 5 games?
Yeah, you know, here's the interesting thing, right? Because you actually can get some pretty solid rotation, especially considering that you have Matoma that's going to be playing off the left, and this might be an opportunity where you could give Pedro Porro, you know, a rest today by moving Spence back over to his natural, you know, right back position, and allow a guy like Destiny Udogie to get back into the starting 11. And I actually think that Thomas Frank potentially rates him a little bit more in the attack, because he does give you a little bit more going forward than Jed Spence does off that left-hand side, whereas Jed Spence to me is probably a better 1v1 defender. And I think in this case, it probably might make a little bit more sense by giving Pedro Porro a rest this afternoon and allowing at least that lockdown defense is going to be on the right-hand side against a guy like Matoma, who absolutely and I hate to say this, there was an opportunity that Pedro Porro could potentially get burned today, just with that pace on the right hand side. So that actually might be the way to go. Me personally, I just think you know, Destiny Udogie just gives this attack you know, a little bit of a different look, and that's nothing against Jed Spence. that was kind of my thought going into it.
Well, the thing is, and I'm gonna add, if you don't mind, guys,
Yeah.
just to add to your point, Steve, I think you hit the money right in the head. I like Pedro Porro. I think for most of the times he can be a great right back, but whenever he comes up against a winger that is very good at 1v1 and is very good at dribbling, he gets skinned, bro.
Yep.
He's on ice skates all the time, and I think in this game, if you're gonna go up against Matoma, you put Jet Spence on that right hand side, he locked Matoma down. And then you
That's
put
exactly right.
Udogie on the left hand side, because now that I think about Brighton, their left hand side, although, sometimes Mente drifts there, they have Welbeck that drifts. Their left hand side is probably their weakest. So I think that's where you put Udogie in. Attack that left hand side
Yep.
with Simmons, because I also think Simmons has been hampered. I think Simmons can work on the left. He has played on the left. He has scored on the left. He has had great performances on the left. The issue is that as much as I love Jed Spence on the left-hand side, he just isn't as great as attacking. And I think with
Right.
Udogie, it will be a much you see more fluid overlaps
I hear
than
But
with
that being,
I
Jed.
do.
but
I
that
Dave, maybe you
that
can come in,
oh,
Dave. But
sorry.
I want to push back by just feeling like I agree that Jet Spence maybe hasn't had as great of games going forward, but I have sympathy for the fact that he doesn't really know who he's been playing with on the left side, whereas Pedro Porro
Yes.
has that relationship with
Fair.
Kudus since the preseason. Like Kudus was the early signing; they had time to work with each other. Whereas with Jet Spence, he doesn't know if it's going to be Brennan Johnson one week, Matisse Tell the other week, Odebear the other week, or Kolo Muani, Richarlison. Like he has, and now it's Xavi Simmons. Like he hasn't had any time to have any sort of opportunities to build chemistry with someone really. Like he's only played 2 games with Xavi Simmons, and then before that it was Brennan Johnson, and the other day it was like Matisse Tell. So I have sympathy
Yeah.
for him. Like they're all different players, and they all play differently from each other. So it's
Yeah.
hard to develop that relationship.
Just to clarify, I'm not slagging on Jed.
I
I'm
know you're
actually
not.
more slagging on
Right.
Porro and his lack of defense ability,
But this
because
is
I do think Porro he really lacks defensively, and we need to lock down Matoma this game.
and Jack, by the way, that's fair. But that's the good problem that you have. It's because we have a Destiny Udogie, and this isn't last year where you needed to play Pedro Porro 50 times in the season, and absolutely wear him down. Right? You actually do have a guy like Jed Spence that you actually can rotate and actually give a dude like Pedro Porro a breather this early in the season before we actually start getting into the bulk of the schedule. Right? So that actually, just from a rotation and a rest standpoint, it actually just might be the right play.
Look, I really like Udogie. Don't get me wrong. I think, before his injury that he had, I thought defensively he was absolutely solid. I locked up some of the best wingers that the league had to offer. Then we sort of rushed him back last season straight off the back of his surgery and stuff like that without having a preseason, and rushed him straight back in. And, you could tell last season he wasn't fully fit. But I don't see the rush to get him in there.
Yeah.
The back line's keeping clean sheets. I just don't understand it, why people are so quick to maybe get Jed Spence out at the first opportunity. For me, the kid has earned his position, and he's not giving it up anytime soon. He's locked up some of the best wingers the league has to offer. He's got himself into an England squad off the back of how good he's playing. And also, I don't think he gets enough credit. I've seen that guy use his left foot. He can use his left foot. He can't play with it. Also, I'd argue, I think he's a lot better going forward than Destiny Udogie. I think one thing people miss with Destiny Udogie is, and this happened in Brighton last year, he's going down the left-hand side. He gets the ball to feet. It's a 10-yard pass inside. He's often misplaced that pass. It's not accurate. He gives away a lot of possession when we are in a lot of ball and a lot of possession when we're in possession of the ball. And I think that's a huge problem for me. Also, in the final third, I don't think Destiny Udogie knows what to do. He gets himself in great positions with them underlaps or overlaps. But often that final ball I find lacking from Destiny Udogie. And that's one thing I've been consistent on, since my time of watching Udogie, that I've constantly complained about him in possession, the lack of ability going forward. Defensively, absolutely solid. But I do think Jed Spence is better at both sides of the game than Destiny Udogie. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there's a conversation to have further down the line, maybe away from home. Do you go with Udogie and Spence either side just to make yourself a bit more defensive, solid? But the reality is, Pedro Porro ain't coming out of the team anytime soon. Every manager's going to continue to pick him, just like they did with Trent at Liverpool. with modern day fullbacks, they are expected to do a hell of a lot going forward. And Pedro Porro is like having a midfielder or a winger in that regard. And, you know, he has good, and to Jack's point, he's got good link up with Kudus now. I think he's picking his timing, so he doesn't have to get forward and make them overlapping runs as much, which means he's not being caught out as much defensively. Also, you know, Kudus is getting back, helping him out massively, which we are starting to tighten up that side a little bit. But to Jack's point, how can Jed Spence have a relationship with anyone down that side when it's being chopped and changed every single week? All we done was move our problem from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. I'm not being funny, but nobody has shown the ability to be able to link up with Brennan Johnson. That speaks more about him than it does Jed Spence. Porro couldn't do it last season, and Jed Spence has struggled this season. At times when Jed Spence is running forward with the ball in a forward motion, Johnson thinks it's a good idea to start running towards him, when all Spence wants him to do is turn and run in behind. We get that so you can make that pass. That's not on Jed Spence. That's on Brennan Johnson. Brennan Johnson comes running towards him and is closing up all the space. You know, then you have Moani. He's not fit. Simmons is only finding his way into the Premier League. So I do think it's a bit harsh on Jed Spence. I think one of the interviews after the game, Thomas Frank said, you know, Tuesday night, that relationship with Jed Spence and Simmons, it's only new. You know, it's going to take a little bit of time. And I do think, to be fair, I think we've got to give him a little bit of time. I think we're being a bit harsh here on Jedi Spence-tacular.
Well, I mean, I'm not, by the way, and I'm not suggesting that Jed Spence loses his spot on the left-hand side. I'm specifically talking about today. An opportunity, and if we both agree that Jed Spence is one of the best 1v1 defenders and has locked up good wingers on the left, he can do the exact same thing on the right-hand side today, specifically against Matoma. And that was that. Yeah. I certainly was not suggesting he loses the spot. I'm just talking about today. It would be a good opportunity to rotate Pedro Porro, but also having Jed Spence and Kudus on the right-hand side, by the way, it's also nothing to sneeze at either. You know what I mean? I'm specifically talking about today.
No, I fully understand the cause, and that's something that I was thinking about during the week myself at some point, you know, maybe away from home, if you want to have that bit more defensive solidity, you don't want to have that weak link that is going to be sort of targeted, I think it is sort of an option. But right now, to be honest with you, I don't see the need to make that change. You know, and I think at Spurs, sometimes we're too quick to go, he's got to play. There's going to be plenty of games for Destiny Udogie to make his mark this year. There's going to be plenty of opportunities for this guy to show what he can do. We're going to be talking about another 60-game season this year. There's going to be plenty of opportunities for the guy. We don't need to rush him in. And I just think, why would you break up that back line when we finally got it to a point where it's keeping clean sheets? I think you've got to keep rolling that out until it proves otherwise. And then maybe that's where Destiny Udogie can come in and take his opportunity. But I don't think we need to knee-jerk. I think people are forgetting we got Doncaster at the weekend, you know. For me, Destiny Udogie, I think that's the right game to bring him back in. Doncaster, let him get him some minutes in his leg. Let him get comfortable on the ball and stuff like that. Just let him get 90 minutes in his legs. Let him get up to match speed, match sharpness, and then progress it from there. I just don't see the need to just put him straight in here today against Brighton. But saying that, Pedro Porro probably pissed me off, be at fault for a goal within the first 5 minutes, and I'll be ringing up Stevie crying on, I should have listened. So we'll wait and see what happens there. But for me, and it was the same last week. It's the same going into every game. Oh, Destiny Udogie, and it's all the publications. I'm not even got fans here. It's just the publications. Destiny Udogie should come back in for this one. And it's like, why? Why would you take out Jed Spence when he's playing this well? I just don't understand it. It's driving me mad. Anyway, let's move on into I just want to get a bit more of a conversation around the back line, and then I do want to get into having a conversation around this midfield. But Spurs have conceded only one goal in the last 5 matches, a massive improvement under Thomas Frank compared to previous years. Marcelo, is this the most solid we've looked defensively in years? And who's been the unsung hero on that back line recently? Is it Romero, Van de Ven, Porro, Spence, or Vicario?
You know what? It's going to sound crazy, but I actually think it's been Paulinho. I know it's great. I know he's a midfielder.
No, I agree.
But I think he has been that anchor that we have been missing for years since I could say when Wainama, you know, has left or Dembele. Yeah, like he is just a unit, and you can see he gives Van de Ven and Romero so much more freedom to push up, you know, press or, you know, pass from the back. I think Paulinho has been great. I think also Romero has stepped up tremendously this season. I think since taking the armband, he's been absolutely fantastic. I think I've been saying heaping his praises. I think he's world class. I think people often criticize him way too often. Um, but I think mainly Paulinho and Romero. Van de Ven, I mean, of course, his speed, its pace, it's his tackling, his reading of the game is fantastic. But also just keeping them fit too. We haven't kept them fit together for a long time, and people forget that when they were fit, we kept a lot of clean sheets. We looked defensively solid in a lot of games, and even with Postecoglou's high, line and crazy tactics, we would still keep the score line quite low with Van de Ven and Romero. They did do a defensive job very well.
Mm.
No, 100%. And I absolutely agree with you on the Paulinho. I'll just get into that in a sec. But big up, Davey. Good to see you, my man. Hopefully you're keeping down under, and hopefully you're keeping well, my man. Good to see you in the house. Good to see you. And SH Spurs as well says some players do the dirty work for the rest of the 11.
Yeah.
And I think that, to Marcelo's point, I think that's where Paulinho
Yep.
has been absolutely key. This guy is pulling down moves. He's getting in, turning ball over, picking up second balls, which is helping us sort of sustain pressure on the opposition. But also it means Romero is not being as isolated as he was last year. Van de Ven's not being as isolated. We haven't had to rely on his recovery pace anywhere near as much as we had last year. And the fullbacks don't look like they're being exposed time and time again and down each side with balls being put in behind. And I think a lot of that does, and Carrio's not being tested anywhere near as much either. And I think a lot of that does come down to us actually being combative in the midfield. Like Paulinho does do all the dirty work for everyone else, and his job is simple. Go and win the ball and turn it on to the players that can go and do the damage. And I think he's doing that to an absolute aplomb. I think he's been so effective, and I think he's been absolutely key. It's one thing that my dad has always banged on about the last few years. We can keep moaning about the back line, keep moaning on about the forward line. That midfield is weak and it's not competitive enough for this sort of level of football. And when you see someone like Paulinho dropped in there, he protects the centre-backs, he gets over, helps Pedro Porro. And, also, when teams are clearing the ball, it's often him that's the first one in there to turn that ball over and give it off to someone to sustain the attack. I think he's been absolutely crucial. I also think offering Romero the club captaincy is something that me and Jack have always been banging on about. You can bitch him on about this guy all you want. This is why I was raging. I was missing Tuesday because he came back out and he hit back against the narrative, and I really wanted to be there to have the conversation on him. However, today and now is not the time so close from kickoff. But I think it's also made him a much better player, giving him that bit of extra responsibility, And I believe he's one of the players that he looked at this squad and goes, I should be captain of this team. The fact that I'm not, I think it is disgusting. I think he backs himself. And for me, I think it's been a masterstroke, because what you're seeing him is sort of taking the lead in games a hell of a lot more. He's the one that goes out, sets down the tone, lays in a nice sort of challenge, even on the ball, which is something he doesn't get enough praise for. He's taking responsibility on that as well, getting on the ball. Last year, I think he took a lot more risks. This year, seems to be a lot more effective with the ball at his feet. And I think he's been absolutely key. Him and Paulinho, I think, are the key. It's something that I was very excited when we signed Paulinho. I said in the Welcome to Tottenham video, if they get past Paulinho, then they've got Romero coming straight in after. If I was a player, I'd be looking to go and play on the opposite side of the pitch, to be quite frank. I wouldn't want that hassle all day long. Every time I get the ball, I'm being kicked, pulled at, everything else. It's an absolute horrible side. And I've seen it in games. We've all played the game ourselves. If there's a player that's continuously getting kicked, all of a sudden they start shying away. They don't show for passes and stuff like that. It's very, very effective in football. I think Marcelo's absolutely key on that. But guys, I do want to sort of move into the midfield. Is that okay? Because there was a lot of conversation in Thomas Frank's pre-match press conference about Lucas Bergvall and Xavi Simons, and I do want to have these conversations before the lineups and that are out. But Lucas Bergvall is really starting to make his mark. 2 starts in a row now, contributing 1 goal and 2 assists. And Thomas Frank said in his pre-match press conference, he loves the raw energy that Bergvall brings. But Frank also said something that caught my ear, which I thought was very interesting. I sort of agree with him. That sometimes they have to tell him not to run because he's so eager. And I do agree with Frank. Sometimes I think he's so eager, he ends up vacating space and leaving huge gaps in that midfield. It is something I see continuously when Bergvall plays, which does leave us then vulnerable compared to when I think Paulinho and Bentancur play there. I think they sort of sit in there together and we don't look as vulnerable on the counter or on their transition. So the question is, do we think that Bentancur starts again today against Brighton, or does the tactical discipline require, in a tricky away game like this, mean that Frank might have to actually go for a bit more experience in midfield and maybe push Bergvall into the number 10 or take him out of the team altogether? I think Bergvall's going to be pushed into the number 10. I'm thinking Papa Matasar might come out of the team today. And I'm thinking he will go with Paulinho and Bentancur back in as the two. I think, one rested against West Ham, one rested against Villarreal, I think was a view to coming into this game today and playing as a double pivot. What do you guys think?
I think the midfield is probably the hardest to predict. I was struggling with that, with the predicted lineup. My thinking was, I'll probably keep it short. My thinking was Bentancur played 90 minutes against Villarreal, and Pop Matasar and Bergvall did not. So my thinking is he might actually continue with Bergvall and Pop Matasar just because they played so well and they're so young that maybe you have an opportunity here to continue to build that relationship and that chemistry with each other, since they are, in a way, the future of this midfield. They are like the future stars. They're so young together. And then you reserve Bentancur probably to come off the bench for this game, but then you can hold him for the Doncaster Rovers game, have him play alongside an Archie Gray, who I think needs a lot of help in midfield. Yeah. Maybe having someone like Bentancur next to him is that good experience, you know, on the ball and out of possession, really, to help him out. And then you can rest Bergvall and Pop Matasar. Pop Matasar and Bergvall, you could argue, are almost undroppable at the minute. I wouldn't blame him for dropping one of them for this game, but they are probably been some of our best players in the last few weeks, really. So that was just my thinking.
What do you also think on Thomas Frank's quotes about him, though, Jack, about, that he's so eager, sometimes they have to tell him to hold his position?
I think that's spot on, to be honest. I think you and I sort of alluded to that. Like Bergvall, I think a lot of people love him because he knows how to look busy. He knows how to sort of just drag you up the pitch. Do I think he's changed? Sorry.
I was going to say he affects games.
Oh,
he wants to go and affect games. And I do like that about the kid. He wants to get on the ball. He wants to get in the box and all that sort of stuff. But at this level, as a midfielder, you do have to have a bit more discipline.
Yeah. I do think he, especially last season, he was guilty of a lot of times just trying to do too much and just not being fully aware of his surroundings, where he didn't know that there was someone right behind him. He would then turn right into them and then lose the ball in a really dangerous area. I think he'll continue to learn and learn and learn, and have that spatial awareness. But Bergvall is, like Frank said, like he's just he's an energetic, very positive player on the ball. And those are all really good attributes nowadays because it's such a sideways, backwards game. It feels like sometimes, like Bergvall is kind of a bit of the opposite. He's almost the complete polar opposite of a backwards, sideways type of passer. But he can sometimes be a little bit guilty of almost being too busy, if that's even a thing. And it then can sometimes hurt you. But I think he's been brilliant. He's debatably been the best he's probably had 2 man of the match performances in a row now. Like I think he is almost undroppable for this game.
No, 100%. I sort of agree with you in that regard. I think, two assists, 1 goal in these last 2 games. It's clear that this guy is affecting games right now. He's contributing. So I think it's very hard to pull him out of the team. But my issue is when you play him in that deeper role beside a Bentancur, beside a Paulinho, it often leaves them exposed. You go back and watch the first half against West Ham, the amount of space they had down his side when he just kept on vacating that position at times. And on another day, it could have maybe come back to cause us a few problems. So I think that sort of brings me on to the next question then, guys. There seems to be a bit of a debate among Spurs fans. What actually is Bergvall's best role in this team? Is it a classic box-to-box number 8 with license to break the lines? Or do you see him maybe evolving as more of a number 10 who plays high, arrives in the box late, and affects the final third? Because that is something he can do as well. You go back to his headed goal against West Ham. That was a run that Dele Alli used to make in his prime, beyond Harry Kane, And so I think that's the debate. What is actually his best position in this midfield? I think it's clear this guy is insanely talented, borderline generational talent, but now it's just about what is his best position in the midfield. Guys at home, let us know in the comments.
I personally think his best position is going to be at the number 8, just the way he likes to play. But right now, with his enthusiasm and how much he wants to get with the ball and get the ball forward and attack, I could see, Frank playing him as an attacking midfielder just because we do lack a lot of attacking midfielders right now. We do have Javi Simmons, but we don't have a left winger, so and he can play left
Yeah.
wing. So, Frank unfortunately has been having to play a lot of players that maybe aren't their favorable position. But I do think Bergvall can play that number 10 role, and I think today, like you've been alluding, David, it would be a day where it would be good, to play him in
Mm,
that number 10 role and have a more defensive midfield because Brighton is gonna look to press us a lot, and we're gonna need that wall to
Mm,
break that press.
mm.
mm.
And as far as with Pape Matasar, as much as it's tough. Oh, it's out.
So the lineup
Odegaard.
Oh,
is as Vicario is in goals. Udogie does come in at left back. Stevie was right with Romero and Van de Ven as your centre back. Pedro Porro at right back, which means Jed Spence drops out.
I
Then we
don't
have
agree with that.
Paulinho. Then we have Paulinho and Bentancur as your holding midfielders. And then you have Bergvall as your cam. You have Udebur off the
Okay,
left,
yeah.
Kudos off the right, with Richarlison down the middle. So very interesting lineup there. Basically,
Okay.
you have Paulinho back into the midfield, and then you have a Dougie coming in for Jed Spence and Udebur coming in off the left-hand side. No Xavi Simmons starting, guys. You surprised?
He's
I
almost
don't
doing a
agree with.
similar thing. He's doing like a similar thing what he did with Matisse Tell because Odebear hasn't played a whole lot, and then he kind of just gave Matisse Tell that shot against West Ham. I almost think he's doing something similar here with Odebear, someone who's had fresh legs but hasn't played a lot of
Yep.
minutes, and he's like, "Here's your chance to give me something to think about."
Yeah.
He's doing something a bit similar here, I feel like, and this is just something that I think we've had so many different things we could say about Thomas Frank, but the one thing I have in a way applauded him for is he has given a lot of guys early chances to feel like they are part of the team, they're part of the squad, where
Yeah.
a lot of managers in the beginning stages of the season have been guilty of maybe just making it very clear, this is my starting 11. These are the guys that I rely on week in, week out. And you're just going to be a backup until there's an injury, basically. And he's given guys chances. There's nobody that could say, oh, I haven't been given my opportunity yet. Even Archie Gray, he gave a start to in the first game of the Premier League season. So, like, guys that are on the periphery of the squad, he's given them chances here and there. And this is something, I mean, people always say, Dave, you and I hate this cliche, but people say, oh, he needs a run of games, needs a run of games. It doesn't work that way.
Nope.
But Thomas Frank is doing a version of that by giving guys who are on the periphery of the squad games here and there in important games, not Doncaster Rovers or something, to prove him wrong or, give him something to think about. So
But
I applaud him for it.
I think that's the big thing because it doesn't signal out to the starting 11 that they can get comfortable because he will make rotational changes.
Yep.
But I also think it's good for the players that they're not sitting there going, well, I'm going to have to wait until a few months in the season for a Carabao Cup game or something like that, where they sort of lose interest or start feeling disinterested or not a part of the plans. By doing what he's actually doing, this is something that I've talked about, Jack, and I think, or that I've been thinking about this week, actually. I think you're absolutely spot on. He's sort of just saying to everybody, be on your toes. Your opportunity can come at any minute, and I am going to give you opportunities. It's up to you to go out there and impress me, But I would say is, they're not going to get a run of 8, 9, 10 games. You are going to have to come in and make a pretty immediate impact if you want to give Frank something to think about, just like Bergvall has done. He got his opportunity, he came in, and he's made an impact, and that's why he's, forcing the hand of Thomas Frank to make them the difficult decisions to either leave out Bentancur or Paulinho or Pape Matar. And I think there's a huge opportunity for Wilson Odegaard today. I don't think Matisse Tell took his, which means Odegaard's next one off the rank. If he takes his, all of a sudden he finds himself ahead in the pecking order. He finds himself more minutes off the bench and stuff like that. And I think it's an absolute great point that Jack has made and something that maybe has been missed at the start of this season, that Frank is finding a way of making sure that 11 don't get too comfortable, which hopefully means they're at it more weeks than not, but also telling the fringe players, you're not just a fringe player. There are going to be opportunities here, and I'm going to give them to you. Let's see how ready you are. He's keeping basically just everybody interested, and I think it's very clever. Absolutely spot on, Jacko.
And no Kolo Muani on the bench, by the way. You wonder if there's an injury there or something like that, or something has happened.
It's a very interesting lineup. I'm not gonna lie. I personally, I wouldn't have dropped Jed. I think this would have been a perfect game to play him on the right, personally. I also think, Simmons not playing Odegaard over him. I mean, I understand giving players a chance, but has Odeberg really impressed? You know,
No, I mean
over
he
He
hasn't
is-
Johnson,
really
and
he hasn't been given many opportunities, and here's
He
his
hasn't been
chance.
given, yeah.
Just
yeah,
That's
but when he has
here's
been given
something
the
to
opportunities,
mention.
has he impressed? That's the thing. That's what I'm
I do
asking.
think.
Yeah, I'm not denying it. Just go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
No, go on, Jack. Sorry, go on. You go.
Well, I mentioned this just quickly in my predicted lineup, mostly because, of course, I have my agendas, which people are welcome to call me out for. I did say this, though, like, if Brennan Johnson doesn't start this game, that would be then 3 games on the back that he has not started or been involved in. So you would probably look at that as like a sign that Brennan Johnson obviously has lost his spot to Muhammad Kudus. Like, even Thomas Frank made that very clear in the press conference. He was like, Muhammad Kudus is basically nailed on the right side. He brought in Xavi Simons straight away onto the left-hand side in the left wing. Now he's giving Odebear a chance on the left wing here, which you could say maybe this was a game that Brennan Johnson probably could have started in, because, again, he's very fresh, hasn't played a lot of minutes. Just calling that out, like, Brennan Johnson has not started 3 games in a row now.
I think it's definitely something, worth taking on board. And I do think that's because Johnson doesn't contribute. With Thomas Frank, Brendan Johnson isn't going to survive on arriving in at the back post, tapping it in. He is going to look from a lot more from Brendan Johnson in terms of getting on the ball, holding it up, crossing the ball, all these stuff that Brendan Johnson has shown he can't do. So that's naturally going to put him further and further down the pecking order. And to be honest with you, I knew it was coming for him as soon as we started signing more and more players in the forward area. It was always up to him. And it's something that me and you tried to say last year, Jack, that there is going to become a point in his Tottenham career. What are you going to do differently? You're going to have to do something differently. And look, we can have this conversation. Is Brennan Johnson, a winger, or should we play him up front? At the end of the day, no manager worth their salt in the Premier League. Even Ange Postecoglou didn't do this, by the way, and no one rates him. But even he didn't look at Brennan Johnson and go, he's my number 10. He's going to bag me 20-odd goals a season, which then means because Johnson isn't fancied up front by most managers, he is going to have to carve out a Premier League career as a winger. And so far, he's struggling to adapt. But I think it's good. It means Brennan Johnson is going to have to bring more to his game. And hopefully, when he does get his opportunity, maybe we see a bit more of out of Brennan Johnson. But I also would say, with Xavi Simons being dropped today, I do think it sort of is opening up the pathway for him to start being moved into that number 10 position. Because I think, when I looked at Xavi Simons' appearances, a lot of the time he does get the ball. He does want to drift inside with the ball, and that's just natural, from him on his right foot coming off the left-hand side. He seems to want to drift into the middle with the ball a lot of the times, and it's not a bad thing. It is something that Son used to do, but I just think naturally, Frank will want more of a runner of the ball out wide, and I think that's where Odegaard is getting his opportunity. And I think what it actually does is gives him an opportunity then to bring Xavi Simons into the game as a number 10, rather than try and switch him from the left into a number 10, and then give Xavi Simons a chance to prove what he can do in that number 10 role. Lay the marker down to Bergvall, put the pressure on him, and I think only naturally good things are going to come from it. But I do think by him being dropped today, I don't think it's he's being dropped because the ability isn't there or anything like that. I just think it's slowly opening the way for him to be moved into this number 10 role.
Spot on, Dave. And I like both of those opinions, but the one thing I will say is the thing that does intrigue me is I guess we can say the continuing development of Bergvall, and continuing the conversation from earlier. It just seems to me he's picked up where he left off last season, where week to week to week, he just seems to get better. And so there are certain aspects of his games that just kind of seem to mesh in that position. But I will say the one thing that's intriguing is Wilson Odegaard, because I think I'm the only guy that actually appreciates the qualities that he has. Yes, he's still a raw product, but when you consider and when you consider the skill set of the other guys that he's been trying to play on that left-hand side, at least for a fact Odegaard will match the pace of Mohamed Kudus on the right-hand side. And one thing I will say,
that is true,
at least Odegaard is not afraid to take on his defender 1v1 and try to do things on the left, right? That's the thing that I appreciate, right? It's not just, okay, well, the edge is closed off, so now I'm just going to pass it back and we're going to try to recycle. He's actually going to try to create things off that left-hand side, which is something at least I can appreciate, right? From this standpoint, it's a pretty clear-cut 11. But I do like that. I do like that call from Xavi coming in at a specific time, coming in that number 10 role, especially if this game gets into the 60th minute and it's still 0-0, or if it's 1-1, something like that, where we're actually shooting for a goal. that makes a tremendous amount of sense to put that creativity in a central area and just let him do what he does best. That was a great call, Dave.
I agree with you on Udabar as well, by the way. Look, I think there's a lot about the kid to like. I think last season, he got on the ball, he drove at the opposition. However, there's not a lot of end product that ends up coming out of Udabar off a lot of the good things he does. And that is ultimately where you're rated at this level, is the end product, and I do think that is something that he needs to bring to his game. There's a lot about the kid to like, and I think he's got a bigger potential than Matisse Tell, believe it or not. That's my opinion. People can call me crazy, but will he bring that calmness and in the final third? Because that's ultimately what it comes down to. The best players, when things are moving around them 100 miles per hour, in their head, it's the game's so slow. They spot the gaps and stuff like that. Will Udabar have that ability? Will that come to him? I'm not quite so sure, and that's where maybe I struggle to go, this kid's going to be this kid's going to be this kid's going to be that. There's a lot to like, there's a lot of potential, but that end product has to come. Hopefully, today is the day, because I think once it starts to click for him, I do think you're going to see a very, very dangerous player. But interestingly, I think Thomas Frank is of a similar opinion that he rates him over Matisse Tell, as he would have put Matisse Tell in the Champions League squad ahead of Wilson Odegaard. So I do think it suggests that maybe Wilson Odegaard is ahead in the pecking order in that regard. Sure. But look, guys,
I will say that the end product comes with with more minutes, right? That's the problem with a guy like Wilson Odegaard. He just hasn't had the minutes this season, right? Granted, and also remember, he's 20 years old. You know what I mean? Like, he's still very, very young in his development. I get that. That being said, he's better for this team on the left-hand side than a guy like Brendan Johnson or a guy like Matisse Tell at this point.
No, look, I do get what you're saying. But the reality is the only way he's going to get minutes is by taking them minutes and producing end product. It's not going to be a case where we can give this guy 10 games. I heard at Harry Winks before. The guy needs a run in 10 games. The minute we get an injury, the guy's in there for 10 games and he gets worse. The reality is,
you know what it is?
You have to take the minutes that are available to you. In years gone by at Tottenham, we ran this campaign, especially with Spurs fans, and it was a narrative put out by the players, by the way, because anytime they were asked, they all came out and said, yeah, well, we need, a run of games to get up and going and find our rhythm and shit like that. Bullshit. At this level and the way the top clubs operate, especially with youngsters and stuff, there's only so many opportunities you're going to be afforded.
Yep.
At some point, you have to make your mark. You have to make me want to give you more opportunities further down the line. And this is a case for Wilson Odegaard. Matisse Tell got his, didn't take it. I think this is Wilson Odegaard's opportunity. If he doesn't take it, then I think that the minutes in the big games or the more important games are going to become less and less for these guys. At the end of the day, we're talking about elite level sport. We're not a charity where we go, let's give you 15 games. 15 games is half a season.
Mm-hmm. Well, the issue is, David, you're the most rated when you don't play. I feel like people rate you the most. They're like, oh, get Odegaard in there, he'll dribble them up, and then you'll get the ball to Kudus and everything, and it's like, man, like, stop, bro. Like, I don't know. I personally, I don't want to sound too pessimistic. I think Odegaard has his good moments. I think he should be used more in the cup games. I think we should have used Simmons for these games. I think the Champions League and the Premier League games, when Simmons is fit, he should play. But I think Thomas Frank is taking a real gamble here, because honestly, if Odegaard doesn't perform well, it's really on him, because if Simmons, unless something comes out that Simmons is he needed a rest or something. But he's only played 2 games.
Yeah. But that being said, we're competing in 4 different competitions, right? So there's
but we got
it's not like he's not going to play today. It's not like he's not going to play today.
Yeah, but
right?
Odegaard should have played next week or on Wednesday, not today. Today is the big game, man. I don't know.
Well,
It's a
you say
risky
that, but
move
then
for me.
fans would complain if we made too many rotations,
Fair,
for the Doncaster
fair.
game, which I don't
Right.
want to
I
rehash
wouldn't.
that whole subject.
You know
But
what? I've learned
I wouldn't though. I
whatever a
don't know.
manager does, Spurs fans will moan the opposite. And then the
That's
next season,
true.
when we get what we've moaned about, they'll moan for what the previous. I've just learned that as a football fan. At the end of the day, whatever you don't have, you're always going to moan about, and that's just the reality of it. I sort of do agree with Marcelo to a point. You know, could you have just held Wilson back for Doncaster, maybe played Xavi Simons off the left? I do understand that point. And look, it'd be an interesting one. I've sort of been a bit hesitant when Frank has made changes and gone into the game a bit worried. But at the end of the day, we've come out the right side of the scoreline. And I
Yeah,
sort of,
gotta
that's where
trust
I
him.
back Thomas Frank today. Like against Burnley, he threw a surprise lineup. We got the win. You know, the other night, you know, I think everyone expected Paulini to start. He didn't. We still got the win. You know, he has made changes and we've been able to show the ability to win games, which is something we haven't done in years gone by. And by winning games and making rotations is only going to bring more people like me. In years gone by, I've been scared because as soon as I've seen manager make changes, I'm like, we're losing this game. And everyone's gone, Dave, don't be so pessimistic. We're winning. We end up losing the game and I just get more and more annoyed. And you could almost see it coming when they've made changes. This time around, it does seem like Frank has the ability to be able to make changes, but also maintain results, which I think is absolutely critical. And hopefully by doing that, then he gets me to buy into making more rotational changes in games like this and stuff like that. Anyway, what's everyone's score prediction for the big game today, boys? Are we winning down at the Amex?
Well, considering
strangely enough, Brighton actually haven't scored a lot of goals this season. I'll go 2-0. I would love another clean sheet, to be honest. I'll go 2-0. I think we'll score from a set piece today.
Ooh, Romero, a Rambam. I'd love it.
I just think that's actually a way to hurt Brighton. I think that's probably an area of their game where they actually could struggle against us. They have a lot of smaller players on the pitch, to be honest. So if we use some of the, especially Bentancur in the same team as Palhinha with Romero, Van de Ven, like big boys in the box there. So I think we could hurt them there.
Yeah, I agree. I think set piece is definitely an opportunity we can get at them. But also, I wonder, you know, with playing Kudus and Udabur, is the plan from minute one to sort of go along over that press? You know, Thomas Frank would be well aware of the success they've had on the pressing metrics. I wonder, you know, is it a way to circumvent it, put it in behind and get these boys to get after it? It'd be very interesting. But set pieces, I think, is definitely an avenue. It's one of our strong points this year, Jack. So a Rambam or a Van de Ven goal, I think everyone should be putting a fiver on it going into a game because, you know, you're gonna win it more and more often than not. Stevie, what's your score, my man?
Well, considering we haven't won at the Amex since March 16th, 2022, and that was a Dos de Cero win down there. Last night, I had this one as a 1-1 draw, but the more that I think about it, I'm actually going to go with the 2-1 win. I'm going to say goals by Lucas Bergfall is going to get one today, and I think that Xavi's going to get his first coming off the bench.
Oh, yeah, a lot of people were saying a Xavi goal, and there's still, you know, he could very well get one off the bench. It'd be interesting to see what position he brings Xavi off the bench today. Very, very interesting. Marcelo, what's your score prediction, my man?
Ooh, you know, just to be a little bit different, everybody's going for a low score. I'm gonna go for a 3-2. You know, I'm gonna go for it. It's gonna be one of those games. I think Spurs is gonna be challenged. You know, I think Brighton's gonna ask a lot of questions for us. They're a good team, and there's gonna be difficult moments. And one thing I really want to see from this team, because they've shown us that they can keep a clean sheet, but I want to see if they can show us if they can bounce back. You know, if we can see the goal, can we bounce back? That's something I'll really be interested in. Obviously, I don't want us to concede, but I think it could be a hectic match. And I think, Steve, you know, you hit the nail right in the head. Xavi Simons coming off the bench, goal. Mohamed Kudus, debut goal. And Richarlison. Yeah, 3-2.
Dude, I'm surprised nobody went full Dermatron and said like 4-0, 5-0.
I don't think people fancy that today, unfortunately. Well, I do agree with Marcelo. Maybe Richarlison is a player we're overlooking. You know, this is the sort of game where no one expects that from the fucker, and he pops up with 1 or 2 goals and does the pigeon celebration, which I'm all here for, by the way. I absolutely love the celebration. Look, today, yeah, I absolutely love it. Today, I do think it's going to be a difficult game. It is going to be chaotic. You know, Brighton do press, and they do have great joy with their pressing. Be interested to see how Spurs go about it, but at the end of the day, we are a lean, mean killing machine. We are big, we are bullies, and we're dangerous from set pieces and all that sort of stuff. So if we're 100% at it today, there's no reason why we can't turn over Brighton at the Amex and win 3 and take 3 points and keep kicking on. But it is going to be a difficult game. This is not going to be a walk in the park. One thing I've noticed against Brighton, if we are slightly off it, they sense it and they go for the kill and punish you. We cannot afford to do that today. We took a humbling at our place last year when we were supposed to be celebrating off them at our place. And we also took a hiding, which collapsed our season, down at their place when we were 2-0 up and ended up losing 4-2. So today, I want to see revenge, but I also want to see a fully focused Spurs team who want the 3 points. And that's the main objective today. Just doesn't matter how, just get the win and we move forward. I want to say a massive thank you to all of you guys at home for tuning in for these pre-match build-ups. You seem to enjoy them, so thank you very much, all you guys at home. By the way, when we keep doing these, make sure you do keep getting involved. Get your comments in. As you can see today, we try and bring up as many as we can or include as many as we can. Also, don't be afraid to get your questions in if there's anything you want us to discuss on these sort of shows. I want to say a massive thank you to all you guys out there for continuing to support through all my problems. Really appreciate that. I want to say a massive thank you to the panel today. By the way, everyone give Jack a round of applause up at 4 a.m. this morning to come and do this. So really appreciate that. And also Stevie and Marcelo as well over the other side of the pond as well, also getting up early. So really appreciate you two boys being here today. Drew couldn't be here today because he was actually at that fan event that's going on over in the USA. He was down with Ledley King and Jermaine Defoe this morning. So he's having an absolute riot over time, which is good to see. Yeah, I was jealous when I seen that as well. I absolutely love Ledley King. You all guys know me. He's one of my favorite defenders of all time. Just quickly as well, Preston Taboy says Wilson gets 1 chance and it's do or die. Jokers, I don't think it's do or die. But at the end of the day, we're not a club that's going to hand out 20 appearances and for him to return nothing. You're going to have to show something.
And he has been given chances. That's
what we're trying to say.
He also, though, I was going to mention this just quickly. We wouldn't have won the Europa League if it wasn't for his performance against AZ Alkmaar. So, like, you know, as much as people are saying he hasn't done anything, he actually, in a sense, contributed to us winning the Europa League because he single-handedly carried us through that game against AZ. So, just
he did good. Yeah, he was good. Yeah, he's definitely.
He won us that game. There was no one as good as him on that day. He scored the goals and he won us that game.
No, listen, I agree with you, Jacko. He has moments that he can be very effective and very good. I think especially against the higher quality sides, he hasn't shown that effectiveness, in my opinion, and especially in the Premier League. I am interested. I do think he is better than Tell. I think he's a better option than Tell. I think he has very good dribbling. He opens up a lot of space. It's just his decision in the final third really frustrates me a lot of the times.
Look, I do take Jack's point. You know, he has shown the ability that he can go and win games on his own, which I think is a huge credit. And I think someone like Frank will look at that, and maybe that's why he's getting his opportunity today. However, there has been a lot of games where he has got an opportunity and hasn't produced that end product. But today is all about Castaway, Wilson, #Free Willy, two of my favorite movies in the world. Let's see what we can produce. A massive thank you to the panel. A massive thank you to all you guys at home. By the way, guys, get over and subscribe to Stevie's channel here as well. Stateside Footy. Make sure you get across and whack a subscribe on that. Also want to thank the people who have gone the extra mile to continue to support us on our journey. That is Dark Sun G. Really appreciate support, buddy. Also, Moondog, very, very kind to you. Ulrika Johnson, the Big D, and also Kieran as well. Really appreciate you guys. Go and get your lunch. Go and get the beers out the fridge. And get back here for the watch along, starting off at 2:30 for our big away day at the Amex. And hopefully, we'll be spending all the money on that Amex when we win them tonight. As always, come on, you Spurs. In the Frank Engine we trust. Chew fucking chew. Let's go.
Come on, you Spurs.
Come on.